to Quebecers the consequences of either democratically or unilaterally choosing to secede.
Thank you. Gilles Duceppe.
Well, I think the choices are very clear for Quebecers. It is sovereignty or Canada as is. We've been trying for so many years to find an agreement between Quebec and Canada. It was always impossible, always impossible. The only solution is the one we're proposing, having two sovereign countries with a new partnership, a partnership recognizing the equality of both nations, Quebec and Canada. And we don't see any other way of solving that problem. Charlottetown was the very last try we made. And we know, Mr. Chrétien, that the proposal of distinct society you're making, well, Canadians don't want that. You know that as well as me. Even if it means nothing, Mr. Chrétien, it means nothing for Quebecers, but it means too much for Canadians. And you know that better than me, and Mr. Charest knows that better than me also.
Mr. Charest.
Well, here's an issue that I also feel very strongly about, to the point where I've always made it very clear to my own party that on this issue, partisan politics will always come in second, that Canada will always come in first. In fact, the real issue for the future is whether or not we as a country are going to work with a separatist agenda or a Canadian agenda. That's the real battle that's out there today. And I want a Canadian agenda. By the way, the good news, let me share the good news with you because I've spent the last 3.5 years traveling. Canadians want this country to work, including a majority of people, of francophones in Quebec, feel attached to their Canadian citizenship and they want this country to work. But what Canada has always required, not just in the last 30 years, but for the last 130 years, is national leaders and national parties able to bring us together, to create a common sense of purpose. I want to do that by changing the way federalism operates and set the table for the more difficult debates that we'll face, like distinct society, like the rebalancing of powers, that will soon come. But let's start first by recreating a common sense of purpose for our country and do away with this politics of divisiveness that we've had for the last 3.5 years.
Thank you, Mr. Charest. Ms. McDonough?
Well, Mr. Oliver, your question was what should the offer to Quebecers be? And I think the offer to Quebecers has to be the offer to other Canadians as well, which is the promise made by the Liberals in the '93 election. That is to make jobs the #1 priority, to strengthen our social programs. These are the things that are going to make Canada strong. These are the things that are going to make Canadians confident. These are the things that are going to make Canada something that everybody wants to be part of. And I believe, having spent a good deal of time in Quebec in the last couple of years, that that's exactly what most Quebecers want. They want to know that they can have jobs, that their kids can have an education, that their relatives can get health care when they're sick. And yes, there are differences about Quebec that need to be respected and recognized. But constitutional reconciliation is not going to be achievable until we improve the political and the economic climate. And then I think people will want to come together in a spirit of generosity to make sure that we can pull together and all move Canada forward as a confident, united country.
Prime Minister, aren't you about ready to give up on this whole concept of distinct society, since it's become a fighting word, particularly in Alberta and BC, where they can veto it? I mean, are you really determined to try to go ahead and entrench this in the Constitution, or how do you intend to sell it?
For me, the word distinct society, the concept is a question of dignity for the people of Quebec. And I have very much difficulties to understand people using it to try to divide the people. What is distinct society? Distinct society is a recognition that 85% of the people of Quebec speak French. When they speak French, they have a French culture. And we say distinct society comes from the fact that John A. Macdonald in 1867 gave the civil law to Quebecers. These are the three elements of what is distinct society. It is already a recognition of what exists, and it's a question of asking the Canadian to understand that the diversity of Canada, the fact that we have two languages and in Canada, it's not a problem, it's an asset. I'm just asking the people to be generous towards Quebec, and they will be very happy to stay in Canada.
But Mr. Chrétien, we can go ahead. We had this discussion in the House preference. No one objects if the only object of distinct society is to affirm the distinctiveness of Quebec. But what I asked you in the House was, does this confer on the government of Quebec powers not conferred on other provinces? Because that's the objection in the other provinces. You said, no, it doesn't. So I got up, remember, and moved an amendment to your motion. I moved a motion that said, therefore, nothing in this clause shall confer on the government of Quebec powers, rights, privileges, or status not conferred on the other provinces. And when that came to a vote, Mr. Charest absented himself from the House, and you stood up with the separatists and voted it down. If your position is that this does not confer powers, why in heaven's name didn't you support our motion? It's the only conceivable way I could think of getting that concept through any of the other legislation.
I'm very happy that you say that you can live with a distinct society concept in Canada if it is not giving some special powers to Quebec. Mr. Duceppe said a minute ago that it is not giving special powers to the Quebec
but you
government.
would not put that in writing, nor would you put it in law. You would not put it into law.
The question is a recognition.
No, but why wouldn't you put it into law? Why wouldn't you put in law what you say your position is? That's what the provinces are asking.
Can we be clear first on one
because
element?
Now you're willing to accept it.
Can we be clear on one thing in regards to this debate? It's an issue of identity. It is not about special status. It's not about more privilege. It's not about more money. It never has been. And anyone who says it is deliberately misleading Canadians on this issue. And I regret that. I mean, for example, Ms. McDonough and I may disagree on a lot of things. But on this issue, I was happy to hear her comments because she represents, I think, a proud tradition of national politicians who is dedicated to bringing Canadians together. Those who further try to divide us on this issue, I think, are rendering a great disservice to the country. But what we're talking about here is recognizing the fact that since 1774, way before Sir John A. Macdonald in 1867, we have in this country a French language and culture that is alive and well and dynamic. It is part of our identity whether we speak French or not, and it is for us a great source of pride. It is for Canada a great source of accomplishment. Why can't we say that? Why can't we say, I'm proud of this, and this is something I want to pass on to my children?
Because we've been trying for so many years, Mr. Charest, and yourself, you modified the Meach Agreement back in 1990 with Jean Chrétien. And you were on the same stages in 92, then in 95, against against Quebec.
Why, Monsieur Duceppe?
There's more than 2 million people that voted for sovereignty last time, Mr. Chrétien.
You're not interested in any solution because you're a separatist.
Yes, we're proposing a new solution.
No, you want a country that is completely separated from Canada, and in doing that, you always talk about referendum. This is terrible for Quebec. You've lost 2 referendums. You do not accept the will of Quebec, want to stay in Canada, and you talk referendum and separation, and the money is quitting Quebec. And who is paying the price? It is the workers in Quebec who pay the price.
Mr. Chrétien,
you made a lot of promises back in 1918.
Mr. Chrétien, let's come back. Let's come back.
We're 3 who have an interest to solve the 4. We want to solve the problem.
Mr. Manning,
let's come back to Craig's initial.
I'm asking you, Mr. Chrétien, will you accept a yes vote in the next referendum, like we're accepting the results of last referendum, because we're still in Canada? If there's a yes vote, will you accept the results?
What would be the question, sir?
The question
will
is
it be another train, another lobster trap like the one that was described last week in Quebec, or will it be an honest, clear question?
It was an honest, clear question.
No, because you said to the Quebecers, let's have a partnership. And you said we will negotiate a partnership when in your mind you wanted just to proclaim independence.
Are you telling me that if the yes had won last referendum, as a Canadian, but as a Quebecer also, you would have refused to negotiate with Quebec, with a mandate in Quebec, negotiate a new partnership?
You didn't have the intention of negotiating anything. Mr. Parizeau, and even in Rimouski, 5 days before the referendum, Mr. Bouchard said that he had, like Parizeau, the intention of moving first with sovereignty.
Can we come back?
Let's talk about solving the problem.
Can we come back? Let's talk about the problem. Can we come back to the initial question? And this is the wrangling we hear among Quebec politicians every day of our lives in the House. But let's come back to the original
Nobody's become more embroiled in this than Preston Manning. Nobody's become more embroiled in the constitutional wrangling
in the
than Preston
referendum.
Manning.
You told Canadians not to worry. I went to see you 16 months before that referendum. I was worried sick. I thought the way you fight a dream is with another dream, not with administrative tinkering. And you told me, as you told the public, I give you credit, you said the same in private as you did public. There was nothing to worry about. All we had to do was manage the Federation a little better and communicate a little better, and things would work out fine. And you almost blew it, sir. Now the question is, if you do that again, you will really blow it, and you do not deserve a second chance unless you have a fresh vision.
But Mr. Manning, if you want to help, you just said that you had no problem with distinct society. If it is mean what I said it means.
But listen to me. No, listen to exactly what I said.
Very nice gesture.
Our solution, would you once listen to an alternative solution? Why not base the future on equality of citizens and provinces? That is saleable in every province in this country. Why not offer to each province a bundle of rights, resources, social services, and jurisdiction over language and culture? Give it to them all so they're treated equally, but allow them to use it to develop distinctive features.
Mr. Manning, on
and
April...
thirdly, let me finish just once. And thirdly, why don't you focus the federal government on 10 big areas of national and international importance. That formula can be sold in every part of the country, but it's an alternative to special status.
The problem, Mr. Manning, is for you there is no difference in our society. There is not one province that's exactly the same. We voted in the House of Commons not long ago
you're not
to change
listening. No, you're not listening to what I say.
To change the Constitution of Newfoundland, because in Newfoundland they have a system of education that is different than Alberta and BC.
Mr. Crenchon, you're not listening, and it's this not listening that could cost the country. When I say give each province a bundle of rights, and then allow them to develop the distinctive features of their economy and their society, I am talking about a greater approach to recognizing distinctiveness than anything that has ever occurred to you. What's wrong with that?
If I may, on this issue of recognizing the equality of the province, on April 16th, 1981, the government of Quebec, in a formal document with other provinces, was ready to recognize the equality of the provinces. But frankly, the problem I have with you, Mr. Manning, on this issue in particular, is that all I hear in regards to Canada coming from you is always negative. I never get a sense that there's something positive that we have built together. I don't get a sense that you see a role for the national government. It's all massive devolution now, which is as wrong as massive centralization was. I happen to think that there is a role for the national government, that there is something constructive about Canada, that if we're going to succeed, we're going to have to stop and make sure that Canadians have a good sense of what they have accomplished together, and then move forward. This idea of a covenant in healthcare, trade, and education, I think, is going to go a long way in re-establishing our sense of confidence, demonstrating that the Federation can operate differently, make a commitment to the basic values we have, and then set the table for the more difficult debate on how we have to bring about some change. But don't be mistaken, even though Mr. Giuseppe tonight doesn't like the word distinct society, is anyone mistaken that he's actually ever supported it, or that he ever will in the future? His goal is quite clear. It's to separate the country. We know that. Let's reach out to the majority of people in Quebec, and I'm sorry to inform you of this, Mr. Giuseppe, including the majority of people who speak French, who want this country to work and succeed. And the biggest challenge I've set for myself is to connect them with other Canadians so that they can go forward together. And I have news for you. I intend to make this country work, because if there's one commitment I've made to my children, is that I'm going to pass on to them the country I've received from my parents. I'm determined to make that happen.
You're coming back with a Charlottetown agreement.
In all due respect.
And I would like to say at this moment...
I'm sorry, but I'm sorry to say, but the agreed upon time limit has run out, and my apologies. So we will now turn to the audience questions. Jacques?
Yes, I have with me Robert Scroso. He lives in Montreal, and he has a question for Mr. Manning.
Mr. Manning, you spoke of equality for all Canadians, but how does your plan address the Native concerns in Canada?
Well, we propose to, and I thank you for that question, for raising it in the context of national unity, because the equality principle would apply there, or the special status approach. We propose to do away with the Federal Department of Indian Affairs. We think that the vast amount of money poured in the top never gets to ordinary Aboriginal people. We propose to support local Aboriginal government, but our concept of local Aboriginal government is more along the line of municipal government for Aboriginal people on reserve, like the local government powers given to other Canadians. And that's how we propose to treat all people equally, give Aboriginals on reserve the same tools that you give to other Canadians, and only this form of municipal government would essentially be federally chartered. And our view is if you could give Aboriginal people the tools that other Canadians have in the form of local government and in the sense of some of the private enterprise tools, that this is the key to the development of our Aboriginal people in a way and at a level that they've not experienced heretofore.
Thank you. Donna?
This is Richard Muse from Wolfville, Nova Scotia. He has a question for Mr. Duceppe.
Good evening. I'm from Nova Scotia, and I can tell you that the people of Atlantic provinces have extreme concerns over a separatist Quebec. How would you address your fellow Canadians in those provinces if Quebec does separate? What role do they play in Canada?
Well, what we're basically saying is that Quebecers are a nation, just like Canadians are a nation, just like the Americans are a nation. And having a sovereign Quebec, two nations with two countries, and developing a new partnership with Canada instead of discussing all those agreements we've tried to reach and we have always failed since the last 30 years. Instead of putting all our energy on those discussions, we should accept that Quebec is different, that we facing two nations, two different countries, and with a new partnership. I mean, that's exactly what they did in Europe, having sovereign countries collaborating freely in larger economic organizations. That's what we're proposing. That's the way of the future.
Thank you. Jacques.
I have with me here Patrick Garbut. He lives here in Ottawa. He has a question for Mr. Chrétien.
Mr. Chrétien, I think most people are really tired of the unity issue. It's a fact. Are we ever going to be able to meet the demands of the separatists without separating our country? Will it continue like a spoiled child? The more they get, the more they're going to want.
For me, sir, I think that I can understand your frustration. But it's been a struggle to keep this country together since 1867. And there will always be people who will want to propose separation. That's part of a democratic society. But I do believe that if we all work together and we do not use a partisanship approach to try to score political points, and if we make sure that we have the same speech in Quebec than we have in Alberta and elsewhere, you know, that will be very useful. And if everybody wants to really keep the country together, we have to recognize to be generous, because when you're in a minority, you always feel insecure. I am one of the Quebecers francophone. And the insecurity living in North America with virtually 300 million people speaking English create a lot of insecurity. And if we gave them the guarantee that they will be respected in their dignity of being francophone, they will want to stay in Canada. And it's why my approach had been to solve one problem at a time, to make sure that Canada functions well. In the last referendum, they were arguing that they were living in a bankrupt nation, that they should not stay in Canada because of that. Now Canada is doing very well compared to others, and the people, if we show the generosity that we, the Federalists, like Mr. Charest, myself, and Madame McDonough, are showing here tonight, they will want to stay in Canada because they realize that they are welcome in Canada and that their future is really in this great country that we all love.
I believe I am getting some words in my ear. And perhaps we ended the debate a little bit prematurely. And so, Mr. Duceppe, we do apologize that the timing seemed to have been mistaken, and perhaps you would like to respond to some of the earlier comments.
Well, we said it again and again. We've been trying to reach an agreement with Canada. And I think that Meach and Charlottetown were the very last steps. And it's very clear that we can't reform that country. And the way we see countries in Europe, and even in North America with NAFTA, having different nations having their own countries, and those countries collaborating in larger economic organization. That's exactly what we're proposing. I don't see why Canadians should be against such a proposal instead of discussing again and again and again like we did since the last 35 years. And what you promised back in 1980, when you made that Constitution of 1982, you know that no government of Quebec never recognized that Constitution, being a federalist government or a sovereigntist government. So you know that pretty well, Mr. Chrétien. You know there's no solution to that problem. You know there's more than 2 million people in Quebec supporting sovereignty. And you know one day, and sooner than we think, we'll have our country. You know that pretty well.
Thank you, Mr. Duceppe. And we now come to our fifth and our final theme for this evening, which is how well Parliament serves Canadians. And Jason, I believe you have a question for Gilles Duceppe.
Mr. Duceppe, you would know as well as anyone in the country how regionally based the last Parliament was. Everybody knows that the Bloc Québécois, the official opposition, had representatives from Quebec only, and with the exception of one MP from Ontario, how the Reform Party had representatives from Western Canada only. The question is the following: how well or how poorly do you think Canadians have been served by this regional-based opposition?
Well, I don't consider the Bloc as a regional party. I consider it as a national party because Quebec is a nation. It's also, I think, was a good thing for Canadian democracy that for the first time in history, the main actors is debating the most important political question, which is the relations between Canada and Quebec, were in the House of Commons. That was the first time that Canadians heard sovereigntists discussing and debating with Federalists in the House of Commons. Before, it was only Federalists there telling that Quebecers were not serious, sovereigntists were not serious. For the first time, I think Quebec sent a very clear message to the rest of Canada. And it was not the first time that we were facing an official opposition with people only from a region. We had the Tories before, with only one member in Quebec. So we lived through that. So I think that the Bloc expressed the reality that Canadians didn't know before.
Jean Charest.
Well, I do happen to think that, and that, in fact, I do know that Canadians felt that something was very wrong in the last Parliament of Canada. Here we had two regional parties whose view of the country stopped at the Ottawa River. And frankly, I don't think they care very much about what was beyond that river. And that led to a situation where we had a national government that was held that wasn't accountable, that could do whatever they want. Mr. Chrétien, for all intents and purposes, was skating alone on the ice, shooting pucks in an empty net. Evidence of that is in this election campaign, where only a few days into it, all of a sudden he discovers health care. And then they started the election campaign saying there was no money at all. Then they found money, billions of dollars, on the Tuesday. And of course, being the Liberal government, they spent it all on Wednesday. And so here we have typically an election campaign that is forcing him to be accountable. But what is the most disturbing about all of this is the lack of leadership in regards to how we bring Canadians together. But it's no wonder that they've been able to slash health care. Mr. Manning's been more busy putting out fires in his own caucus than fighting the health care cuts. Mr. Duceppe's been more obsessed with separation. We want to see more balance and a national alternative. That's what I've been preparing for the last 3 years.
Thank you, Mr. Charest. Alexa McDonough.
I think it's evident that this Parliament has been a disaster for Canadians. I mean, we've had a federal Liberal government that's been sitting on its big, fat majority for 3.5 years, accountable to nobody, a government that was elected to be everything that the Brian Mulroney government wasn't, and has picked up the Tory torch and been running it with it ever since, in fact, torching the things that matter most to Canadians, which is having jobs, health care, education for their kids, and a reasonable, fair tax system. Why? Why have they been getting away with it? Because we have one political party that doesn't want Canada to work for Canadians, and another opposition party that doesn't want government to work for Canadians. And both of these gentlemen are busy trying to convince Canadians that we should tear Canada apart and we should tear government down. We've made government work much better for Canadians in the past. And with the presence of New Democrats, we've always been able to make a difference. That's how we got Medicare. That's how we got public pensions. That's how we've gotten a lot of the things that Canadians value most.
President Manning.
I have several suggestions on how to make Parliament work better, but I'd like to analyze the composition of the Canadian Parliament a little bit differently than you did, Jason. If you look at our Parliament, you really see three constitutional or unity options. You see the status quo federalists who say the federation is basically okay the way it is. You've got to tinker with it a little bit, but it'll survive. They're the ones that have brought us to the brink of the national unity disaster. You see the separatists who want to break up the federation. And there's a third group, and that is reform, that wants to reform the federation as the best way to keep it together. In the last election, the West expressed its discontent with the federation by sending reformers. Quebec expressed its discontent by sending separatists. And in this election, what is absolutely crucial is what Ontario and Atlantic Canada do. If Ontario and Atlantic Canada endorse the status quo, that could sends the wrong signal both east and west. But if Ontario and Atlantic Canada were come down hard on reform the federation, that could be the thing that unifies our country.
Jean Chrétien.
But for me, what is very important in politics is to be able to have a programs that you can talk about in every part of Canada, not to be afraid to say what you think in Alberta. I was in Calgary. I was not afraid to talk about distinct society. And in Quebec, I talk about the same thing. It's why we have managed to have members elected in every part of Canada, because our main preoccupation is to have policies that is known by everybody and respect diversity in unity. This has been the history of our party. And we believe that the government can play a force for good in society, that we can use the government, but the government should not be in everything. So having an agenda that is acceptable to the country is what is needed for Parliament to work well. But unfortunately, the parties have taken views that are too extreme and not acceptable for all parts of Canada. It's why only the Liberal Party got the benefit of the situation.
Jason?
Mr. Duceppe, the backdrop of the 1993 election was all the anger and hostility that Canadians had for politicians and the political process. A lot of the anger has subsided, but instead of open hostility, there's a lot of indifference now. Polls tell us that people aren't that interested in this campaign. There's a great deal of indifference. Why do you think politicians have not succeeded in restoring confidence in Canadians with the political system?
Well, when we look at the federal government, the Liberal government we had promising to abolish the GST, promising to settle the problems with Quebec, nothing of that was done. But more largely, I would say that we have to discuss and debate with people and represent them in the House of Commons as well as in any parliament. And that's why the Bloc is there. It's not only to be in power. Democracy is about representing the people who elected us in each riding. And that's what we're doing with the Bloc Québécois, discussing with people, representing them. And most of the time, when you look at the vote taken at the House of Commons, the NDP supported the Bloc Québécois. Most of the time when we were defending the unemployed, when we were denouncing the family trustees. So that's the kind of job we have to do to get the respect of the people.
This also points to the longer-term problem, though, on this issue. And Mr. Duceppe said it very well. In the longer term, there are Bloc members who got themselves elected in the province of Quebec. The real issue is if we're going to deal with this problem, whether or not we're going to reach out to national political parties and national leaders who are relevant to every part of the country. I also traveled to Calgary, and then the next night traveled to Chicoutimi and traveled to every part of this country. One of the very important commitments to make this country function, because we are blessed with all this geography but have a small population base and a great deal of diversity, is to make a very strong commitment to national parties that are going to connect Canadians among them. But in the end, make no mistake about it, my objective is clear. If there's a political party that can defeat the Bloc where they are in the province of Quebec, we're going to do that job. And that's where we'll start, by reuniting Canadians, by focusing what they have in common, by having them recognize that in Quebec a majority of people, and again a majority of francophones, I'm sorry to say to Mr. Duceppe, badly want this country to work. Well, I have news for him. I intend to connect them to Canadians in Calgary, Canadians in Come By Chance in Newfoundland or wherever they live, and I intend to make this country work.
Are you telling me that the people in Quebec are supporting the Plan B? Because you're supporting the Plan B just as Jean Chrétien and just as Preston Meaning. That's what you said very clearly. Are you telling me that people are
Canadians,
supporting Plan B?
What I know, Mr. Duceppe, is that a majority of people, a vast majority, not just a vast majority of people in Quebec want the Canadian Federation to work. Your own policy advisor, Mr. Terp, recognized that a few months ago and embarrassed your party. I think you would probably, if you're honest tonight, recognize the same thing. Well, what they need, though, is an opportunity, and they need the leadership able to connect them to other Canadians.
This issue is not going to be resolved by wrangling around by Quebec politicians. It's going to have to be resolved by others. But I think the issue that's always being avoided here, it's a question of trust in the Parliament. And the only way you're going to restore trust in the Parliament is for politicians to show their trust in the people. And I come back to this issue I tried to raise earlier of accountability. I think until there's greater accountability, I mean, Mr. Chrétien, you broke the 3 biggest promises in your Red Book. People refer to your Red Book like they do the Bre-X prospectus, so don't go near a helicopter. The only way to get accountability that I can think of is to put in the hands of the voters the tools to hold us accountable, and the best one is recall. It's the power to fire an elected official who breaks his word or breaks his promises. Now, are you or are you not prepared to support that step to restore accountability to the Parliament of Canada?
No, I don't believe, as I said, in by-elections every month. It's not the way that the system works. We have a plan. We have a plan. We go to the people. We explain our plan.
But they can't.
We say what we want to do. When you're the government, you do your best. You're not sure that you will achieve everything, but I'm very proud of what we have achieved. In some areas, I'm sorry, we have not been able to do what we wanted to do. We wanted to harmonize the sales tax with all the province. Unfortunately, and I'm sorry, we were not able to do that. But you look at the totality of what we've done.
We're not talking about falling short.
We did better than expected and we promised on the deficit. I never mentioned in my program last time that one of the great success of the last 4 years had been Team Canada. When we went abroad with all the premiers and 450 people going abroad, selling goods and services that the Canadians were able to sell in a global market.
We're not talking, Mr.
And you look at the totality of what we've done, and people pass judgment.
We're not talking about you falling short on certain policy objectives. We're talking about when you make an explicit promise and break it, the people have no way of yanking your chain in between elections. Now, do you believe that people should be given a chain that they could yank so that when you say, I'll kill the GST, and you don't, there's something they can do between elections?
I just said to you that we do not succeed in GST to do what we wanted to do. We talk in the Red Book about harmonization with the provincial government. We have done it with 4 provinces, and we have not been able to do it with all the provinces. So I'm sorry,
here we are,
but look at the totality.
Here we are back to the Red Book. You broke your promise on the GST, you broke it on jobs, you broke it on NAFTA, you broke it on childcare, you broke it on the CBC, you broke your guarantee on education and health. Those are the promises you broke, Mr. Chrétien. And saying to Canadians that you're sorry they misunderstood you isn't going to wash. Or quoting them the fine print from the Red Book is only going to remind them that the Red Book ended up being red-faced Book 2 when it was put out during this election campaign.
How do people hold you accountable for keeping your promises between elections?
I think accountability has something to do also, Mr. Manning, with leadership. And I think a lot of Canadians were troubled with the fact that in regards to your own party on leadership, that when you were faced with a situation of intolerance, that you ended up throwing out the mainstream members of your own party and keeping on side or giving a 2-minute penalty to the extremists in your own party.
Avoiding the question of how
that's an issue of accountability.
Can I ask you a question on this same issue of accountability? You're very big on accountability of the government, and you should be. And that's what an effective opposition is about. Where does your accountability come in? When you supported the GST and you supported the harmonization of the GST, no wonder you couldn't stand up to this government and hold them accountable for breaking the commitment. You said when you got into that parliament, governments can't do anything about jobs, and you did nothing about jobs until the last few months leading into this election.
Well, you
did not perform your role as an effective opposition when this government was cutting health care and cutting education and cutting the CBC and cutting its commitment to child care. Why? Because as the opposition, you weren't doing anything to stand up to them on any of those things. You were saying cut further, cut faster, cut deeper, cut into the bone marrow.
You asked me a question.
Is there any accountability for opposition parties?
Okay, Ms. McDonough, you asked me a question and give me an opportunity to answer it. On accountability, the old CCF, which gave birth to your party, used to believe in this concept of recall and referendum and free votes. It's where the Democratic came in the new Democratic Party. Are you prepared to be held accountable in that way, to support a recall provision so that you could be held accountable for the promises you make in this campaign?
I would have been delighted and will be delighted after June the 2nd to be in the House of Commons being an effective opposition, not talking out of both sides of my mouth for 3 years and suddenly on the eve of the election discovering jobs, health care, education and child poverty as issues you should be addressing.
Mr. Manning, you yourself, you were always lecturing on us on free votes.
We had
there was not, you know, we had much more free vote on our side.
No, that's not
because
correct,
you could not control.
That's
you could not control your troops. The problem is, and I don't blame you, you have to be a leader and make decisions according to the reality of the day. In politics, I've been in politics a long time. And you know a lot about politics because your father was there, and sometimes it's difficult to govern. There is no easy solution. You know, a lot of people promise easy solution. It's the toughest jobs in the land. But look at the result. Look at the result. We are, the IMF said that Canada will have the best performance of all the industrialized world in 1997 and 1998. The same Canada that was considered as a basket case in 1993.
You can go one of the worst records on child poverty among all industrialized
nations. And we ranked 14 in the OECD as the unemployment rate's concerned. So
you can go all around.
I may have found the answer on accountability that you were looking for. It'll happen on the 2nd of June, 1997. It will happen for Mr. Chrétien and Mr. Manning, for everyone. And I think that on that day, Canadians are going to want to look to the future. They're not going to want to look to the past. And they're going to also want to look, in the end, to national leaders and parties that are able to reach out to every part of Canada.
Madam Chairman,
that will be the ultimate accountability for each and every one of us.
What has happened here is that all the leaders have gone all around the mulberry bush, but they have rejected the 3 basic tools to establish greater accountability in the Parliament. One is free votes, the other is referendum, and the other is a recall mechanism.
On that note, I'm going to again say time is out. We are running out of the big time towards 11, so that is our final round, and I thank you all. And now we go to our last group of questions. Jacques.
Yes, I'm here with Patricia Fry. She lives in Dunsford, Ontario, and she has a question for Mr. Manning.
Mr. Manning, it seems to me that the problems of Aboriginal peoples, which you earlier mentioned, have historically been rooted in brilliant parliamentary solutions of politicians such as yourself, imposing assimilationist policies and trying to make these peoples the same as all other Canadians. I would like to know how many Aboriginal peoples you have consulted about your brilliant municipal government scheme.
Well, we've consulted quite a few. Before I ever got into politics, I spent 20 years in management consulting in Alberta. One of my areas of work was working with trying to improve relations between Aboriginals and energy companies. So a lot of my experience in this area came before I ever got into the Parliament. The problems that you refer to in how the federal government has dealt with Aboriginal people, and I consider it one of the scandals, both a social and economic scandal in the magnitude of a tragedy, all occurred under Liberal or Tory administrations. What we're saying is the way that is to help Aboriginal people not be assimilated to any degree that they do not want to be, is to give them the powers, local government level, to develop the distinctive features of their own economies and their societies. That's the purpose behind our decentralization approach with respect to Aboriginal people.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Donna.
This is Carolyn Ward from Montreal. She has a question for Mr. Charest.
Hello, Mr. Charest. My question is on the subject of how Parliament is serving Canadians, how you feel about the option of partition as a means of representation.
Thank you, Carolyn. And you being from Montreal, you'd obviously be very concerned about all of this debate and what impact it would have on your life. I guess the most honest answer that anyone could offer you in regards to what would happen on partition is that if ever we as a country cross that line where there's a yes vote, we're all walking in to a black hole. There are no rules. History has taught us that. Everything that we know about conflicts around the world equally also teaches us that. A few events in the last few days have reminded us of that, but let me just return to what it is exactly we are facing. There are no legal provisions in our Constitution to separate the country. There are no countries. I think the old Soviet Union may have had dispositions to do that, but that was about it. There's no country in the world that contemplates its own disappearance, so it's illegal to separate. We know that. In international law, there are no rules either. I mean, try to, refer to one instance where international law was able to impose its will on a group of people if they didn't want that to happen. So the most honest, and I'm maybe very sobering also, but most honest answer is to say that this is a black hole and that there be no rules.
Thank you very much.
That being sobering, if I can just add this, doesn't it make it even more compelling to make the country work? Thank you.
Jacques?
I'm with Philip Thomas. He lives in St. Catharines, Ontario. He has a question for Mr. Chrétien.
We've heard a lot of talk about voter apathy in the early part of this campaign. Canadians have seen a lot of broken promises. We're pretty cynical towards politicians. All of the politicians, all of the parties put together policy platforms and booklets and CD-ROMs, but for the most part, Canadians don't pay any attention to those things because they really don't believe what's said in them. My question is, how much responsibility do you take for the high level of voter apathy, and what are you doing to improve the situation?
But for me, I know that the people are very often very unhappy or don't like very much the government. But there is one thing I'd like to say to you, that we are elected to serve. I spend my life in public life, and I know that all my colleagues do their best. We disagree, but we are there to serve. And it's very difficult. And it's why it's very difficult to to be reasonable, to be middle of the ground, not to have the easiness of doctrinaire approach. But for me, I believe that politicians serve well, and we're very lucky in Canada. We have a level of public service that is probably one of the best in the world, and the same thing with the level of public service in Canada. And what is good is we know that the people are watching us, and they have the right to vote for us, and we have to gain their confidence. For me, it's going to be my 11th election. I've been elected 9 times in Quebec and 1 time in New Brunswick. And every time I felt that it was a great honor that the people in this riding gave me their confidence and voting for me, and I've always done my best. I've not been perfect. I don't claim I'm perfect, but I've had a lot of experience, and I try to find a reasonable solution in situations that are very difficult. And it is the way that I believe people can still vote for politicians who are committed, like I think I have been over the last 30 years.
Thank you. Donna, do you have a question?
Yes, this is Hugh LaRue from Gloucester, Ontario. He has a question for Mr. Duceppe.
Good evening. I'd like to know how you can compare yourself to the Tory opposition a few years back when they had representatives, at least in Quebec, in the ridings, when you didn't have any outside of Quebec, the last election.
Yes, they had one member from Quebec out of 75 ridings. There were 74 Liberals and only 1 Tory. But the question is more important than that. I think in democracy, we have the right to be represented by the people we choose. And the Quebecers are paying taxes in Canada. They have the right to be represented in the House of Commons. And they voted, and they will vote for the Bloc Québécois again. because they feel we're representing their interests. And as long as we're paying taxes, we'll be there. That's an old lesson from the American Revolution. No taxation without representation. So we are there, and I think it's also good for Canadian democracy, since the main actors concerning the most important political debate in Canada are there to debate that question of the relations between Quebec and Canada.
Thank you very much. We have time if we have one very, very quick last question. Jacques.
I've been promised it will be. It's,
very, very quick.
I'm with Lindsay Patrick. She lives in Ottawa, and she has a question for Mr. Charest.
Yes, in your platform you talk about cutting the budget, reducing taxes, but what federal functions are you going to cut to be able to balance the books?
Well, we're going to look at federal program spending. Among the things we want to do is merge departments of natural resources, fisheries, agriculture, and environment into one single department of sustainable development. One of the things we want to do is privatize the Department of Public Works, because we think there are a lot of things that the private sector can do better. The main functions of Public Works would go over to Treasury Board. There are cost savings that we're proposing also in the way that government operates. We've detailed it all in this plan, Let the Future Begin. We're the only party, by the way, that has included the numbers on both spending cuts and cost savings. They've been verified. There's a technical note. There's a technical note at the end of this also. Do you want to, is it your turn, Miss Medina? Well, and we, no, I have my own thank you.
Thank you for your very brief answer, Mr.
Thank you.
Charest. Because it's now time to turn to the closing remarks. Again, there has been a draw to determine the order. And Jean Charest, back to you.
Again. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you about the future of our country tonight. At the beginning of my remarks, you may remember that I said that leadership matters. And it matters very much for this country. It can make a real difference. I've hoped that you've had a chance to learn more about the kind of person that I am, but also the kind of leadership that I want to offer Canada. You deserve leadership that has the courage to attempt what may seem to others as being impossible. You also deserve leadership that will also bring to this job a real determination to never give up, whether it's the unemployed or health care or those who are poor. We need leadership that will always be determined to keep our country together and keep it moving. And you also deserve leadership with new ideas, ideas that will really make a difference. My challenge in the election campaign now is to go out there and reach out to as many Canadians as possible and to offer them an opportunity to look at my plan, to compare, and I invite that comparison, to compare the leaders, compare the plans, the ideas, our perspective for the future. I believe we offer the choices which can best offer our country a move forward together. And I also need your help. I need your help to build a new Canadian coalition so that Canadians can move forward together into this next century. What I want to do is three things. I want to bring taxes down so that hard work can be rewarded and more work created. I want to build up the health care system so that it will be there when you need it. And I want to draw on the wills of Canadians to stay united and strong so that we can also move forward together. Thank you tonight for listening, for being with us, and I look forward to your confidence on the 2nd of June.
Preston Manning.
At the beginning of this debate, I challenge you to consider whether you want more of the same or whether we want a fresh start. And based on what you've heard, do you want a country in which big government is at the center of things, more of the same, or do you want a fresh start for Canada which puts you and your family at the center of things? Do you want a country in which Canadians are extended special status with all the wrangling about what that means and definition? Or do you want reform's fresh start for Canada where the unifying principle of our great country is equality of citizens and provinces? Even if you like what you hear, you may ask, how can I trust anyone? You have little faith in promises of politicians because of the track record on broken promises. Well, you can choose more of the same, more broken promises, politicians who ignore you between elections, or you can choose a fresh start, a commitment from us that is not guaranteed by promises, but is a real democratic guarantee. Reform's Fresh Start guarantee will give you the power of recall, the right to fire an elected official who loses your trust. It will include a commitment to free vote so that your MP works for you rather than the party whip or the Prime Minister or the party leader. and it includes the right to use referendum and citizens' initiatives mechanisms to direct the Parliament when it fails to respect your wishes. The Reform Party believes that this is a fresh approach that Canadians are looking for in the 1997 federal election. You have told us the kind of country that you want for yourselves and your children. We invite you to use the Reform Party of Canada as a vehicle to reach that new Canada. Thank you.
Gilles Duceppe.
This evening we have discussed many of the issues facing Quebec and Canada, both social and economic. Over the last 3 years, the Bloc Québécois has taken clear stands on all of these issues. In fact, the voice of the Bloc has been heard and has made a difference, especially for those too often without a voice, workers, the poor, and the unemployed. And the Bloc Québécois intends to continue its work by pushing for jobs and long overdue fiscal reform. But tonight, we have also dealt with important political issues. For almost half of this century, Quebecers have been claiming more powers for the government in Quebec City. And clearly, this is not likely to change. Half a century of constitutional discussions on the divisions of powers culminated in the failures of Meach and Charlottetown. Quebecers are tired, as Canadians, of going around and around the same issues. At the eve of the 21st century, this merry-go-round must stop. We must all face the fact that the only feasible solution is the sovereignty of Quebec and a new partnership with Canada, a partnership as desirable as it is inevitable for the two peoples who have links as strong as ours. May our common values of tolerance and understanding allow us to face serenely these changes which we believe to be essential for the future well-being of our two people. Thank you.
Jean Chrétien.
Canadians are reasonable people. You do not expect your government to perform miracles. But you have every right to expect it, to work hard, to plan for the future, to be responsible, to be honest. And that means being straight with people about the facts, about options and consequences. That is why I refuse to try to buy your votes with a premature tax cut or with reckless spending that will take away all the gains we have made together since 1993. That is why I will not gamble with our very future as a country with divisive rhetoric. We have always progressed as a country by taking a reasonable, responsible course, by working together to find common ground. I pledge to continue the job we started in 1993. We are on the right track and will stay on track. To balance our budget once for all, to work on job creation, to invest in health care, in children, in education, learning and innovation. Serving as your Prime Minister is a great honor and a great responsibility. A Canadian Prime Minister must serve all the citizens in all regions of our country fairly and equally. I love Canada. I have great faith in its people and great confidence in its future, and it's why I ask for your support on June the 2nd. Thank you very much, and good night.
And last, Alexa McDonough.
I want to leave you with some final thoughts on Canada's future. When you voted in the last election, you didn't vote for $7 billion of cuts in health and education, but that's what you got. You didn't vote in the last election to keep 1.5 million Canadians out of work, but that's what you got. You didn't vote in the last election for Liberals to implement conservative and reform policies, but that's what you got. How did it happen? Because Parliament was lopsided. There is a solution. When this campaign began, the New Democratic Party became equal participants in the political process for the first time since 1993. And since that time, we've had more discussion, more attention, more debate on the critical issues of jobs, health care, education, poverty, and fair taxes in 3.5 weeks than we've seen in Parliament in 3.5 years. We put those priorities on the agenda, and after the
on a special election edition of the National Magazine, A look at the federal political parties, where they've been and where they're taking us. A national magazine special, next.
The Red River Relief Concert, hosted by Tom Jackson, Sunday night. This is CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. From CBC News.
A special edition of the National Magazine. Tonight, the federal election and the party politic, the Chrétien Liberals.
I accept with humility.
Who are they? What do they represent?
Well, the Liberal Party has been so successful because it follows the center and it's willing to sell out its principles to find that center.
The Liberal Party, a history of pragmatic politics, the price of success. And the opposition choices, from established parties to populist movements, the 97 campaign and the contest over ideologies.
Will Reform survive? Will the New Democrats survive? Will the Conservatives survive?
Real choices, the opposition.
The National Magazine, a special edition with Hannah Gardner.
Good evening. Welcome to this special election edition of the National Magazine. Tonight, two documentaries that take a step back from the campaign trail. We're going to look at the parties in this race and the tensions and ideologies that are influencing the campaign. We begin with the Liberal Party. For most of this century, they have been in power more than out. Some would say they achieved this dominance by perfecting the art of pragmatic politics. The National's Leslie McKinnon examines the price of success for Liberals and Canadians.
Most of the time over the past 100 years, the Liberals have governed this country, and with that authority have shaped the Canadian approach to social policy and national unity. It was Mackenzie King who began the tradition of modern Canadian liberalism. The trick, he said, was to straddle the middle and lean to the left. Harking to right of centre has been done too, and there's always some tension in the party about where that centre is.
The genius of liberalism has been as an attempt to shift and define this centre perspective on society. And with notable exceptions, it's been doing a reasonably good job.
Well, the Liberal Party has been so successful because it follows the center and it's willing to sell out its principles to find that center.
1993, the Liberals regained power after the longest banishment since the early part of the century. In their near decade in exile in the Mulroney years, the world had been transformed by globalization. Accordingly, in the out-of-office period, this malleable party had changed shape. Jean Chrétien, who campaigned like a traditional liberal on jobs and health care, moved after the election to very different goals of extending free trade and the deficit. It was a shift to the right of the median, perfectly in tune with the times. In fact, Chrétien said, the old right-left split in the party was obsolete, and the only reality was the global economy.
I accept with humility the challenge to prepare Canada for the 21st century.
The turn he took was not achieved without some dissension within the party. Giles Gerson is Ottawa bureau chief at Southern News. He was a policy advisor for 2 years in the Chrétien government.
He didn't want a monodimensional party that was going to be obsessed with redistribution and have very little to say about growth. He wanted, it seems, a party that had a lot to say about economic growth. That was going to be the way out of some of the poverty issues and unemployment issues and so forth. So that was quite a shift.
How much Chrétien had shifted the party was revealed in Paul Martin's 1995 budget. There were billions of dollars worth of cuts. Changes in funding patterns meant the provinces would take a lot of the grief for slashes in health and education. The end was signaled once and for all of the universal nature of social programs. Any naysayers in the party were quelled by the admonition there was no other path.
Mr. Speaker, there are times in the progress of a people when fundamental challenges must be faced when fundamental choices must be made and a new course charted.
Paul Martin closed the chapter on the tradition of federal prodigality raining down on everyone. The word was the international climate gave him no choice. But Maud Barlow thinks there were alternatives Martin could have considered. She's a former party member and policy advisor who broke with the party when it endorsed free trade and cut social programs.
I know so many what I call social liberals, the more traditional liberals, who are truly upset at what their government has done. And they tell me privately, and they tell others, that they feel betrayed and they feel helpless, and they know that there are alternatives, and they try to speak inside the party about fair tax and different trade policies and different employment, full employment policies. And they truly believe that if these alternatives were placed to the Canadian people would choose that. But those alternatives are never placed there.
No one foresaw the degree of the cuts that would have to take place, the sheer size of the cuts. Because if you remember, in the run-up to the 1995 budget, you had the Mexican peso crisis, you had a jump in interest rates, and that changed all the planning assumptions, almost at the last minute, requiring substantially larger cuts than anybody had envisaged.
The referendum. When Lucien Bouchard entered the ring 3 weeks before the vote, the Federalist side almost lost. The Liberal strategy of don't rock the boat, of quietly ignoring the crisis, held up badly against such a charismatic leader. A tenet of the Liberal Party, besides striding the middle ground, is national unity, which to Liberals means making accommodations for Quebec.
And if the people of Quebec understand that the goal is separation, of course they will vote no.
Jean Chrétien's non-confrontational style and lack of fallback plan made the Liberals look like something antithetical to their nature, out of touch with Quebec. And some insiders lacked confidence in Chrétien's methods.
I was concerned that this kind of low-key approach, that this effort not to ruffle any feathers or rock the boat, and not respond to some of the charges that were being made by, and claims that were being made by the Parti Québécois government, led people to believe untruths, led Quebecers to believe falsehoods about the nature of the federal system.
Frank Graves is president of Ecos Research in Ottawa. He says partially because of the government's handling of the referendum, Canadians are feeling a growing anxiety about the viability of the country.
At the very least, Canadians were underwhelmed with the performance of their government in general on this particular area. Although I'm not so certain that they had, convincing ideas about, how we would have done what we would have done differently.
As close as the crisis came, the keep your head low pragmatism seems to have pulled the Liberals through this time. This short-term thinking, without planning for the long-term consequences, the lack of a grandiose scheme, these traits can be traced back to the early days of the modern Liberal Party. The maxims of Jean Chrétien: utter pragmatism, caution always. This is no roll the dice prime minister. Go all the way back to the traditions of Mackenzie King. King, too, was conscious of the necessity of forging alliances, of making rapprochement with Quebec, with business, with the elites. At the helm of the party for 3 decades, Mackenzie King defined modern liberalism. From a party of rugged free enterprise, he fostered its beginnings as a party of social reform. The times demanded it. He signed some of the great social welfare bills: unemployment insurance, a National Housing Act so vital for returning veterans, and the jewel in the crown for the post-war baby boom, the Family Allowance Act in 1944. These measures were welcomed by the country, which had been traumatized during the Depression. But King was no reformer. For him, leaning to the left also fended off the real left, the socialist CCF, whose provincial arm had just elected Tommy Douglas as Premier of Saskatchewan. Mitchell Sharp was a senior civil servant in the King government and later became an MP and cabinet minister. He doesn't credit the CCF. He says the bureaucracy foresaw what the public wanted and was the biggest influence on government.
We had all been through the Depression, that was the point. I was 18 when the Depression started, when the markets broke. And my father lost his job and so on. We were all participants and we said never again. So it wasn't just the parties to the right or to the left that were urging policy. It was within the bureaucracy, the advisors of the government, the advisors of the Minister of Finance.
Where King set the standard for Liberals was in his careful handling of Quebec, whose strong support guaranteed his longevity. After King, and Laurier before him, national unity became an abiding principle for the Liberals. His social programs gave Quebec a reason to feel some fidelity to the federal government. But more than that, he was willing to extend some real power. Christina McCall has written extensively about the Liberals. She says King didn't have much understanding of French Canadians, but he understood the importance of forging a French-English alliance.
King had absorbed an essential lesson, and it's the essential lesson of the Liberal Party, which is the need to accommodate Quebec. And the way he managed this, and it took some trial and error, was to get himself a French lieutenant. And for that role, which is really a kind of deputy leader's role, he was very fortunate in finding two sort of just, trusting, sensible men in Ernest Lapointe and Louis Saint-Laurent. And he gave them real power. This was not just rhetorical power, power within the province, but also real power within the cabinet, so they could feel themselves to have an influence on the governance of the rest of Canada, and that was very, very important.
When King stepped down in 1948, he picked Louis Saint-Laurent, his Quebec lieutenant, as his successor, further appeasing Quebec. Louis Saint-Laurent, the avuncular corporate lawyer, governed Canada during some of the best of times, the boom years after the Second World War. But by 1957, the Liberals had lost touch with the public. The centralist nature of the Saint-Laurent government had alienated the West, and parts of the business community were alarmed by American takeovers of Canadian plants, which were encouraged by government. The traditional alliances crumbled, and the Liberals went into the wilderness for a while, where they would completely revitalize the party. In fact, under their new leader Lester Pearson, they moved to left to center. Out of office, the social Liberals in the party pulled together and hammered out a reform policy at a seminal party conference in 1960.
There must be continuing and constructive help, not handouts. As Bob Ferguson was saying, people don't want handouts. But they want help so they can help themselves to a good life in their own part of the country.
The timing was right for a leader like Mike Pearson. In the States, there was the small L liberal age of Kennedy and Johnson and the war on poverty. Economists called this period up to the early 70s the age of confidence. Prosperity gave Pearson leeway to construct a large part of the Canadian welfare state. The Pearson Liberals expanded UI and introduced the Canada Pension Plan. Their definitive reform, Medicare, had been pioneered by the NDP in Saskatchewan, and there's no doubt Liberals were influenced by that. Yet such a keystone of Liberal reform caused sharp debate within the party. Some feared Medicare was unaffordable. There was a classic Liberal compromise. Medicare was delayed for 1 year. Tom Kent was special policy advisor to Pearson. He thinks some of the social reformers in Pearson's cabinet would have resigned if the delay in implementing Medicare had been any longer.
There was never really any doubt, in spite of the fact that there were many people within the party who disliked it, including some in the cabinet. There was never really any doubt that it was going to be implemented. There was an effort to, in a sense, to stop it. The Minister of Finance who'd succeeded Walter Gordon, Mitchell Sharp, felt that it couldn't be afforded. I think it's fair to say he didn't really like it anyway, but the argument was that it couldn't be afforded at that point.
I was advised by the Bank of Canada and other people that were advising me that we were building up our expenditures at an enormous rate. And that we ran into the possibility that we might be downgraded. So on the basis of this, I went to the Prime Minister, Mr. Pearson, and said that I was very much in favor of this system of Medicare, but I think we would be well advised to postpone its entry. Medicare came into effect before the next election. People forgot about the delay.
Pearson dealt with Quebec in the time-honored Liberal tradition, by accommodation. The Canada Pension Plan was split into a separate program for Quebec, tailored to its funding needs. But there was a renaissance going on in the province, the quiet revolution. At every level, even in the schools, reforms were taking place, and the power of the church over all aspects of Quebec life was being thrown off. This new sense of independence fueled the Quebec nationalist movement. The Liberals knew that to keep hold of power, they had to change priorities.
We're pleased to introduce major new savings from Bell. Bell Real Plus Extra now offers 40% off the cost of all calls to your favorite overseas country. Not just calls to one number, but on every number you call in that country. And with savings like this, is it any wonder that so many people have switched back to Bell this year? Welcome to the new Bell.
Wow, I feel good. I knew that I would not. I feel good. I knew that I would not. So good. So good.
By now, you've probably guessed how we feel about our new Chevrolet Malibu winning Motor Trend's 1997 Car of the Year award.
In a busy clinic like this, things can get pretty crazy. Like the other day, a headache hit and I needed fast relief. I could have taken aspirin or Tylenol, but more and more doctors are now recommending Advil. They say just one Advil's tough on headaches. And they're right. One is often enough. Advil, for today's tough pain.
The house came with this incredible deck.
However, it needed work. I said, let's paint it. She said,
stain. So there's this wood shield. Excellent stain. And it's covered by the no quibble guarantee. Best of all, you can get it in over 1,000 colors.
we chose cedar for the deck, harbor blue for the trim, and Bermuda triangle for the chair.
Do you think this will ever fade?
Nah, it may disappear.
Home hardware, help is close to home.
Once we started drinking Latancia, they wouldn't drink any other milk.
Tasting this milk is like tasting the difference between tap water and spring water.
When we set out to discover what would become the next level of protecting the purity of milk, little did we know that we had also discovered what would become the next level of taste.
It tasted like milk really should taste.
Lactancia Pure Filter Milk, the taste of purity.
It was 1968, and Trudeau mania was in full swing. But on the horizon were inflation, burgeoning deficits, and the OPEC crisis. It meant the finances were no longer really in place for the Trudeau initiatives for youth and the very broadly extended unemployment insurance. Yet certainly at first, Canadians were caught up with Trudeau's charisma and the fact that the vision he presented was communicated through some resonating phrases.
Canada must be unified. Canada must be one. Canada must be progressive. And Canada must be a just society.
Trudeau's vision, or obsession, was to bring Quebec into the federal fold, to offer Quebecers an alternative to separatism. Although there are those who would say that Trudeau actually left the country far more divided than it was when he began his almost uninterrupted 16 years in power. In 1970, when FLQ terrorists, whom many associated with separatists, kidnapped a Quebec cabinet minister, Trudeau imposed the Anti-Democratic War Measures Act. Although polling shows that most English Canadians accepted this as a necessary evil, the October crisis is still not forgotten in Quebec. José Legault is a columnist for Le Devoir. She says the War Measures Act in Quebec is still a painful collective memory.
it's a very, very deep wound. We had, you know, like in dictatorships, 500 people rounded up in jail for no reason, kept in there. Some of them suffered psychological torture. That's documented. It's very difficult. And I was 10 years old at the time, and I remember going to school, having to walk in front of soldiers. And I didn't think that was possible in a democracy.
The crisis flared again when the separatist Parti Québécois under René Lévesque was elected provincially, leading to the 1980 referendum. Canadians may have thought there was only one person who could fight this. Trudeau, ever so briefly out of office, was re-elected just 10 weeks before the vote.
These people in Quebec and in Canada want to split it up. They want to take it away from their children. They want to break it down. No, that's our answer.
The federal side won. Trudeau and his right-hand minister on Quebec, Jean Chrétien, promised the country a new start, a constitution and a charter of rights. The bringing home of the Constitution seemed to be classic Liberal pragmatism, deal-making and accommodation with the provinces. But in the end, the government of Quebec refused to sign. Some Liberals will argue this strategy was politically expedient, even though there's a supreme irony in that the Constitution that was to appease Quebec was not endorsed by Quebec. Tom Axworthy was Trudeau's principal secretary. He says Quebec was not left out. It excluded itself.
I want to correct people's terminology and analogy saying Quebec didn't want. The separatist government of Quebec did not want the Charter of Rights and repatriation. That was not the public opinion or the people of Quebec.
The betrayal of 1982, and when we say betrayal, it's not sovereignist humiliation rhetoric. It is actually patriating and adopting a new constitution and excluding at the same time one of these so-called founding peoples. It's impossible to fathom that kind of event again in a democracy, but it happened, and I think it left scars, and the ensuing events certainly showed that.
What ensued is that Trudeau retired, and the Liberals in the '84 election, which was won by the Conservatives, held on to only 17 seats out of 75 in Quebec. The Liberals entered a long sojourn in opposition, where they would choose as leader the most reviled figure amongst Francophones in Quebec because of his role in repatriating the Constitution. Jean Chrétien now says that since his government has accomplished its goals in this term in office, it's time to seek a new mandate.
I have just met with the Governor General, who has issued a writ dissolving Parliament. A general election will be held on June the 2nd.
The question now for the Liberal Party is, since it's reduced the deficit, should it lean to the left and spend more on social programs? Or should it appeal to right-wing Liberal voters and offer tax cuts? It seems in character that there's a schizophrenic promise in the new Red Book to do both with any surplus, and insiders say there was considerable internal debate about this promise.
If we're returned, then we're going to be in, again, one of those fascinating periods in the history of liberalism. Which direction will Chrétien now take the party, having done the necessary precondition to develop a new agenda? What will that new agenda be?
There's winning and there's winning. You might win an election, but when you've sold the country out and you've sold your political heritage out, I think Liberals should ask themselves some very hard questions about what the price of success is.
The policy of pursuing strategy that mimics ideology has worked remarkably well. The Liberal Party of Canada has been one of the most durable political organizations in the Western world in this century. Moving towards the next, Canadians might ask whether it's good for democracy to foster what has become the only national party. For The National, I'm Leslie McKinnon.
Please stay with us. Our special edition of the magazine continues in a moment. We take a look at the other side of the House of Commons, the opposition choices, from established parties to populist movements, the '97 campaign and the contest over ideologies.
Even if parties are just fighting for top opposition spot or mere official status, they can still be powerful forces capable of influencing government.
Looking for a side dish you and the kids will love? Introducing Kraft pasta and sauce side dishes. Try new Italian herb tomato, pasta shells and Italian sauce, savory tomatoes, flavorful basil and oregano, and Kraft's fine white cheddar makes this side dish so irresistible, it goes with just about anything, even a fussy family. There's a Kraft pasta and sauce side dish for everybody. New Italian herb tomato, creamy garlic, and traditional Alfredo.
This clinic can get crazy sometimes. Like the other day, a headache hit and I needed fast relief. I took Advil. More doctors recommend Advil because it's tough on headaches. In fact, one is often enough. Advil, for today's tough pain.
If this scares you, you may need a shrink. Non-greasy Preparation H cream. It shrinks hemorrhoids to relieve the pain and itch.
Wow! Get it, free rewards faster!
Now you get 50% more Club Z points every time you use your Zeller's credit card.
Wow! Get it!
50% more Club Z points.
Free rewards faster!
Now, every time you use your Zeller's credit card, you get 50% more Club Z points.
At Zeller's, where the lowest price is the law. Get it!
Of course they were misleading everybody.
We feel like we've been lied to.
Tough issues.
If the competitive situation doesn't change, we're dead.
We've been told to sell off all of our products.
Tough questions.
You are still an undischarged bankrupt.
Yes.
What's the real story? Venture finds out.
We're basically stonewalled and given a runaround.
They listen to you, they do nothing.
We're representing the little guys against the big guys.
Venture, everybody's business, Sunday night following Sunday Report.
Welcome back. On the right, it is a battle royal. On the left, a noisy comeback campaign. No one can complain the opposition lacks fire in this election. Oh, at one time, voters might have felt all the parties were the same, not much choice among the contenders. But not in this election. The opposition parties are debating the real issues: taxes, jobs, national unity. For voters, it's a bounty of options. Here's the national senior correspondent, Brian Stewart, with a documentary on the opposition.
The scramble from the foothills of opposition to the far summit of power is daunting in Canada, the path so often blocked by regional divides and chasms. And all opposition, from populist movements to generations-old parties, must confront the face of one of the most formidable and canny political machines anywhere on earth.
We will say to the Canadian people that
the Liberal Party of Canada, in power for almost 70% of this century. So we can dismiss our opposition as ineffectual losers, but they may be more hardy than we believe, and especially now, a lot more interesting. What's striking now is that ideology is returning to our politics. It's again a clash of core beliefs. And that means opposition parties are worth attention. Upsets are always possible. And even if parties are just fighting for top opposition spot or mere official status, they can still be powerful forces capable of influencing government. After all, in just 40 years, there have been 6 minority governments dependent upon the opposition. That's about a quarter of the time. What's more, opposition parties stand for deep ideological roots in our national life that really cannot be ignored. Some roots go directly back to the urban Canada of the last century. Conservatives still try to emulate Sir John A. Macdonald's vision of a national party anchored on an alliance with Quebec. So-called Red Tories, now in eclipse, were spawned by the social gospel welfare movement of the 1880s. In the West, the tradition of populist movements has spawned crusades both of the left and right wings. On the left, from the progressives down to the CCF and NDP. On the right,
when social creditors talk about political reform,
from social credit down to reform. Canadians don't think of themselves as ideological, but they tend to hold strong views.
Generally, people haven't thought out their ideologies, but it doesn't mean, they don't have them. It's simply, it's like the man who was speaking prose all of his life without realizing that he was speaking prose.
William Christian is a leading historian of Canada's political parties. He says our wide range of ideologies helps make us distinct from the United States, and we suffer when there's less choice.
I mean, the Canadian people obviously decided that they didn't want to hear a lot from the NDP and the Conservatives over the last 3.5 years, but if it would have been better for the NDP and the Conservatives had something to add to the populism of reform and to the nationalism and social democracy of the Bloc and to the liberalism of the Liberal Party, and the broader the ideological spectrum and the more voices contributing to the conversation, I mean, the more creative solutions to Canada's problems get put forward.
But it's unclear what the dominant ideology right now is. Despite an apparent lurch to the right, our politics in the 90s may have been distorted by two factors.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
First, the Bloc Québécois. Fully 50 MPs put Quebec nationalism before their own politics. So a part of the left is muted.
You have MPs telling you that when sovereignty is done, they will not work together again. One will join a right-wing movement, the other a left-wing party, and then they will fight underground for their own ideas.
Political writer Manon Cornelier has written a book on the Bloc. She says it's mostly to the left, but it cannot form an alliance with natural allies like the NDP and dissident Liberals.
Everybody is afraid to be associated with the separatists because it will be then can be used as a political argument against them.
The other factor that may distort ideology, years of common government fixation on debt and deficits.
Canadians have been told simply that governments can't do certain things. And therefore we haven't, for the last, 5 or 6 years, we haven't debated about what governments should do. And so we don't have a very good fix on what Canadians would like the society to look like if we weren't mired down in the politics of debt and deficit.
Roger Gibbons, political scientist with the University of Calgary, says we're only now returning to face basic decisions about government.
So the interesting thing to me is that we're now entering in to a very different kind of ideological arena in Canada because we can no longer use the debt and deficit to solve these ideological issues. Governments in Canada are starting to move into a surplus situation. They actually have money now that they can begin to make decisions about spending or reinvesting.
We can make strategic investment to meet pressing needs of Canadians.
So voters face profound decisions. Should the federal government be further reduced in size and function in favor of freer markets, more provincial powers? Should we enter an era of tax cuts? Or should spending be restored to boost social services and shore up central government? And how to approach Quebec? These are the battle lines opposition parties must fight along, and the fiercest combat is on Canada's now crowded right wing, where reform and new conservatives struggle for survival.
And in the process treat all Canadians equal and all provinces equal, rather than special status for one.
To its founder, Preston Manning, reform is still more a movement than a party, anchored on a long tradition of Western populism. Tom Flanagan, a political scientist, was Reform's director of strategy before resigning in 1992.
The standard feature of populist thought is the belief that special interests dominate government, and that the way to change that is to change the political system, to break the power of special interests and to put political power in the hands of a broader cross-section of people.
Ce message veut devenir mieux connu des Québécois.
As any special interests are anathema to populism, it follows that reform opposes special status for minorities, women's activists, official languages, and inevitably Quebec itself. It's a core position that's sometimes seen as hostility. Reform has even been accused of racism by some critics, which infuriates Manning.
I think the public is getting sick and tired of this type of...
The anger is sincere. Some extreme bigots have infiltrated reform, but there's nothing inherently racist about its policies.
There's nobody less racist than Preston Manning himself. I can say this with absolute certainty. When you criticize preferential policies for minority groups, that's very easily attacked as racist, and other politicians have deliberately done that. So they have tried to transform a criticism of official bilingualism or multiculturalism or of Canada's immigration policy, tried to transform that into evidence of racism.
However, there are angry currents of social strife in Canada which other parties censor, but which Reform's populism sometimes mirrors.
The political process in the past tried to kind of constrain that, to filter out the public by using political elites, by using political parties. Reform presents us with a more unfiltered vision, a more unfiltered idea of what the Canadian electorate is like. Not always nice, not always pretty, but it's real, and these are real people who want their opinions to be heard. And I think Reform has done a good service in that respect.
As a right-wing party, Reform remains a curiously Canadian hybrid. For example, it does promise even more public spending on health and education. But right-wing policies dominate its platform. The national government would be slashed by another $15 billion, and its influence weakened by more decentralization. Major Crown corporations from Via Rail to CBC television would be privatized, and taxes would be cut by $2,000 per average family. As for law and order, gun control legislation would be scrapped, sentencing made much tougher. There'd even be a referendum on the death penalty. Overall, Reform may have lurched further to the right than Manning himself is comfortable with. He originally wanted a broad-based movement that shunned right or left labels.
I think there's kind of an irony here. I think that Preston's unwillingness to adopt specific ideological labels invited into the party very discordant elements. And so his unwillingness to define the party himself has allowed some, in some cases, quite far-right elements to define it for him. I think Preston has ended up with a party which is further to the right than he really wanted.
My question, Mr. Speaker.
As an opposition, Reform gets mixed reviews. Some insist it lacks coherence and national vision.
Reform never managed to get a focus in what it wanted to do. I mean, it because, again, and that was the problem of it being so overwhelmingly a Western-based political party.
But it's had formidable ideological impact. In much the same way the NDP used to force the Liberals leftward, Reform has drawn recent government to the right. Many Reform demands for budget controls and decentralization of powers have helped set the national agenda.
I think Reform has perhaps been one of the most successful oppositions in history. This Liberal government has done a remarkable number of things that go, not all the way, but go part way in the direction that Reform has wanted. Moving towards a balanced budget, greater targeting of social programs to base them on need, devolution of control of social programs to provincial governments. These were all big Reform objectives.
But a question for Reform is what happens if it fails to break out of its base in the West? Can it survive, or will it quickly fade as other populist movements have? That likely depends on the battle of the right between Reform and the new Conservatives of Jean Charest.
Our future. It's the only real issue.
New because much of the party's historical link to the center-left, once called red Toryism, has been junked in favor of a form of snazzy neoconservatism.
I think the Conservatives are trying to create this sense that they represent somehow a more dynamic and technological, a more active, a more creative response. That they're a party who understands through their young but experienced leader, what the future is going to be. That they're going to try to sell themselves to as a more sophisticated party of the right.
The world is changing, and government better change too.
Charest has gambled a party can conquer some very crowded ground.
What Charest has tried to do is to come right up the middle between the Liberals and Reform. But that's a very narrow slice of the electorate to be found in that particular spot. We don't need 3 parties on the right. We probably don't even need 2 parties on the right. And unfortunately, the existing parties don't seem to be providing them with much space. They're jostling up.
With minimal hope of recapturing power this time around, Conservatives are aiming at least at an impressive enough comeback to eclipse Reform. Charest has appeal as a champion of national unity. For Quebec, he's promised some form of distinct society status. And for the rest of Canada, a modified version of Ontario's right-wing common sense revolution. It includes an even bigger tax cut than Reform's, 10% immediately, more later on. A balanced budget by the year 2000, but also, like Reform, more spending on health and education. And in a surprise appeal to rural and western voters, Conservatives match Reform in promising the gun law will be scrapped. So voters on the right have an interesting choice: Manning's populism, Charest's brand new conservatism. But they also know it may split their vote, and that could perpetuate Liberal domination indefinitely.
The PCs will probably win more seats, but they've got a real problem with their vote being spread thinly, and it's hard for me to see how the PCs are going to win enough seats to eclipse Reform unless unless the Liberals really collapse. I mean, it could happen, but we don't see it happening right now. So I think the most likely thing after this election is that sensible people in the 2 parties, Reform and PCs, will see that if they insist on playing war of attrition against each other, that they're in for a very long spell without power, and that they should start looking for avenues of cooperation.
So all is in flux, up for grabs on the opposition right. And when we come back, what's happening over on the left that could affect the race and the course of government?
If you folks can do it, Canada can do it.
Last year, 25 Canadians came together to reinvent Canada. Now those same people challenge the politicians in a national town hall on national unity. Town Hall, Wednesday at 8.
2 out of 3 Canadian adults have at least one major risk factor for heart disease. That's why it's very important that you take preventative steps now by attending our Heart Health Clinic Day, where we'll help you complete a Health Watch risk profile that includes an assessment of your cholesterol level and blood pressure. Watch your newspaper for times and dates, or talk to a Health Watch pharmacist. And if you discover that you're at risk, see your doctor.
When I got rid of my gray hair, I wanted a natural look, so I didn't take any chances. I used the sure thing for a natural look called Just for Men.
Apply Just for Men, and in 5 minutes, rinse. It's specially timed to blend away gray, bring back your natural look, and condition hair.
It's a sure thing.
Just for Men, the sure thing for a natural look. And now try Just for Men Color Gel for the hard-to-color hair of mustaches and beards. Brush in, rinse out. Just 5 minutes.
Enjoy our Mexicana Festival at Idomo. Add the warmth of Marquez Spanish Colonial Pine to your home. Choose from this hotch regular $9.99.95, now just $6.99.95. Or this home office for just $8.99.95. Enjoy this majestic home entertainment unit for $19.99.95. Or choose this TV armoire for only $7.99.95.
Mexicana, all month long at Idomo. Join us.
Evergreens take a real beating in winter. You wonder if they're going to survive at all. Come spring, they could even look worse. They need Miracid, and they need it now. Soon you'll see the wonderful difference because Miracid is more than plant food. Miracid contains special nutrients and minerals like chelated iron, plus special soil acidifiers to create ideal growing conditions. So help save your winter-damaged evergreens and keep them strong and beautiful with Miracid.
Today, Sprint Canada unveils a revolutionary new savings plan.
From now on, you pay just 15 cents a minute.
15 cents a minute?
Any day, anytime, anywhere in Canada.
Question here.
Are there any restrictions?
Like what?
Well, like the local phone company. Best prices only on weekends or in the evenings.
There are no restrictions. Just 15 cents a minute, any day, anytime, anywhere in Canada.
I get it. It's not a special promotion. It's all the time. Cool.
No more waiting to call. I've got a small business. That'd be great for me.
15 cents a minute, 24 hours a day.
Do Sprint Canada savings include overseas calls?
Yes, you get great by-the-minute rates to every country in the world.
Sounds good to me.
It's like freedom by the minute.
Finally, somebody's listening and making it simple.
It's like total long-distance freedom.
Get the most for the least. Call Sprint Canada now at 1-800-605-7718.
Feel free to call anytime.
For more than 3 years, the Liberal government enjoyed a luxury almost unique in more than a half-century. It's been able to rule with scarcely a glance over its left shoulder. For the once influential left in Parliament has been demoralized and fragmented. The official opposition Bloc Québécois often criticized the swing to the right, but as it wanted out of Canada, it was easy to say, who cares?
Their effectiveness as official opposition, I think, was not that good.
Menno Cornelier, writer in the Bloc, believes the party's weakness and inexperience in Parliament simply helped the government to avoid tough questions.
They don't know how to use committee effectively. So that's made the Canadians don't get information maybe they should get on some bills, on some policies and things like that. And also the government took it too easily to dismiss what those people were saying on almost everything and not giving sometimes answer that even Canadians maybe were expecting. So the government take it as an argument also not to answer.
Mr. Speaker, speaking from the left.
And the NDP, Canada's left-wing conscience, with only 9 seats, now seemed a hollow shell of its former self. Hard to believe that just a few years ago it had 43 MPs, and former leader Ed Broadbent was the country's most popular leader.
Unemployment in 7 of our 10 provinces is as bad or worse when this government was elected.
Or that it so long helped set the political agenda.
They were different, they were democratic, they were grassroots and so on. And in fact, in the 1990s, the Reform Party came sweeping out of from the right wing of the political spectrum and stole the whole issue of democracy away from them.
Historian Reg Whittaker.
The remnants of the NDP in the House sit there and watch the Reform Party playing exactly the same role vis-a-vis a Liberal government that they used to play in the past, that in fact the Liberals have stolen the Reform Party's policies on fiscal conservatism and deficit reduction, and that's pushed, of course, the political spectrum way over to the right.
No more cuts! No more cuts!
The 90s, of course, have been a difficult decade for the left almost everywhere. The right has had ideas and confident momentum. There's still lots of protests, but it's now fragmented by what's called the politics of identity, seen in the rise of ethnic, gender, sexual orientation, and cultural issues.
These should have been issues that that a Social Democratic Party would put together as a new coalition. But on the whole, it hasn't really worked. It hasn't worked for a number of reasons, not least of which is because identity politics tends to be quite exclusivist. It hasn't generally led to broad coalitions that work politically. Instead, it's often led, in fact, to a kind of apoliticism.
In the House of Commons.
But under new leader Alexa McDonough, the party has taken a major gamble to try and fuse a broad new center-left coalition, one strong enough to win from a dozen to 20 seats and shake government back from the right.
We're going to shake up Ottawa, and we're going to wake up the Liberals.
It has certainly gambled with a platform that doesn't budge from the left. It promises $19 billion more spending on social services and new government initiatives to create jobs. Instead of cutting taxes, it would increase them on the rich and corporations by $8 billion. And there'd be tax breaks for those on low incomes. To critics, it's just the old soak the rich, return to tradition.
The electorate is looking for parties that can somehow give them a handle on what Canada is going to look like in the century to come, and to believe that you can rebuild a party on the foundations that existed in the 1960s or 1970s is suicidal.
But others feel the NDP's pledge to be a guardian of social values is shrewd strategy.
A lot of people are going to say, well, you know, I'd like the idea of the Liberals, you know, continuing to manage the economy and run things. They seem to be running it pretty well. They're getting the deficit under control. But somebody's got to remind them, you know, that there are people out there who are suffering as a consequence of these social policy cuts. And I think people, you know, if you look back to, you know, 65 years worth of track record, I mean, the NDP is the party that they can count on to do that.
The minimum NDP objective is to climb back to official party status of 12 seats. That would give them presence in question period and on committees.
The main thing that a strong NDP in opposition would do would be to give support to the left-leaning Liberals within the Liberal Party. There would really be, in effect, an alliance between the NDP, an invisible alliance, but an important one, between the NDP and the left-wing people in the Liberal Party who right now are sort of cut out of the policy loop, but yeah, a strong NDP would bring them back into it.
But there is again potential for NDP disaster if Quebec and national unity now become the dominant issue in the campaign. For this can distort the clash of ideological ideas and reduce crossover protest voting. At least for now, however, all Canadians face a campaign of interesting choices about their future. From the left through the center to the right, basic beliefs are caught up in a remarkably crowded political race. A race for gain and for survival. For The National, I'm Brian Stewart.
Please stay with us. When we come back, Dan Bjarnason with a look at Canada's first election.
You wanted to vote, you had to be white, own property, and be male.
Last year, over 7 million Canadians switched to a new phone company. A phone company that believes that jobs and research are not a cost, but an investment. An investment in their business, in their customers, and in their community. And if it sounds like this might be your kind of phone company, then we'd just like to say welcome. Welcome to the new Bell.
Maybe we should focus more on the rational reasons for buying a new Chevy Malibu, like the fact it goes 160,000 kilometers between tune-ups, or has a larger trunk space than Taurus. But we can't seem to shake this overwhelming sense of joy at being named Motor Trend's 1997 Car of the Year.
Janet. Welcome to my kitchen. Today, Howard and I are going to demonstrate cranberry orange bread. Isn't that right, Howard?
Absolutely, Mom.
Let's see. 1 cup of milk, 1 egg, 1 tablespoon of butter, 2 teaspoons grated orange, and 1 tablespoon of sugar. If you miss any of these ingredients, just call the number on your screen to hear this and other recipes repeated. Let's see, where were we? 1 teaspoon of salt, 3/4 of a cup of dried cranberries.
Cranberries rock.
And 3 cups of Robin Hood Best for Bread Homestyle White. Finally, we'll add 2 teaspoons of quick rise yeast. Select the white cycle and press the start button.
See how much higher Robin Hood Best for Bread flour bakes over our all-purpose flour? And it's ideal for bread machine and scratch baking. Call 1-800-519-2776 to hear this and other recipes. Or to find out how you can win a year's supply of Robin Hood Best for Bread flour, a Black & Decker bread machine, and Farberware bakeware. Call today.
From the forks of the Red and the Assiniboine Rivers, Tom Jackson hosts a night of great musical performances. Live, the Red River Relief Concert. Tune in and help Manitoba rebuild. Sunday night on CBC.
Our political birth took place on July 1st, 1867. That's Canada's birthday, and it was an occasion of much celebration and a sense of moment. But our first election took place later that summer. It wasn't so much a grand opening, but more of a, now who's going to mind the store? By modern standards of democracy, our first election was a pretty rough and tumble affair. The politics of patronage never had a finer hour, and if you wanted to vote, you had to be white, own property, and be male.
In 3 of the 4 provinces, they couldn't vote secretly. There was only a secret ballot in New Brunswick, and so you had to take your life in your hands and kind of march into the town square and declare who you were for, and be prepared to, bear the consequences of that. And they were very raucous, often drunken, brawling kinds of public affairs.
To us now, the ground rules in that first election seem loose and open to abuse.
It ran over a 6-week period of time. Candidates could run in more than one constituency. They could be elected in more than one constituency. They could run for federal and provincial office at the same time and be elected to both.
1867 was hardly a national election at all, but 4 separate elections in the 4 existing provinces. There were national alliances rather than national parties. There was scarcely yet a real nation. Ontario was the stronghold of one of the great nation builders of the last century, John A. Macdonald. He was a wily politician who used every trick at hand.
Money played an enormous part in the politics. Elections probably consumed more money in this period than they have ever since, in sheer outright bribery, in just the amount of drink that was paid for by parties. So they didn't look very much like our elections today.
In Quebec, Macdonald's alliance with Georges Cartier carried the day. Cartier was so persuasive in his arguments for backing the new Confederation that almost 3/4 of Quebec voters agreed with him. In New Brunswick, much the same story. Samuel Tilley, a crucial Macdonald ally, delivered 8 of his province's 15 seats. But Nova Scotia loudly said no to the Macdonald idea and elected only a single pro-Confederation MP. Everyone else, led by Joseph Howe, was a separatist, sort of a bloc Nova Scotia. And how did that first election wind up? It was no contest. Sir John A.'s coalition took 60% of the seats. The master political carpenter became our first prime minister.
Macdonald recognized, I expect as well as anyone in the country, was that if the new Confederation Pact was to work, it meant bringing together French and English, Catholic and Protestant, Ontario, and Quebec, and the Atlantic provinces. And this is, in a way, what is contained in the phrase national unity, about which we hear so much.
Dan Bjarnason, CBC News.
A word about tomorrow's special edition of the National Magazine at 8 o'clock. I will be in Montreal for the second of our election town halls. The topic, national unity. Now please don't go away, because the National at 10 is coming up. Peter Mansbridge has all the news, and later Brian Stewart will have analysis of tonight's French language debate. Plus there'll be a feature documentary on the troubles in Zaire. That's next. I'll see you tomorrow from Montreal. Thanks for watching.
From CBC News.
Il manque pas sa cible à chaque semaine sur le chèque de paye de chaque travailleur. Ça, il manque pas sa cible.
The rematch. And?
Very good. Thank everybody in Winnipeg for all their hospitality. Great.
Mission accomplished in Winnipeg.
The kids are giving us this stuff. This is excellent.
And on the magazine, one more time in French. The party leaders square off. The issues, the defining moments. Election 97, the French language debate.
The National with Brian Stewart and Peter Mansbridge.
Good evening. Well, as you know, the French language debate among Canada's national party leaders is underway right now in Ottawa. It was scheduled to be going on until 10:30 tonight. But suddenly there has been an interruption. Let's go to Ottawa. The CBC's chief political correspondent, Jason Moskowitz, is standing by just outside the conference center. Jason, what's happened?
Well, after an hour and a half of the debate, there was an announcement in the hall. Is there a doctor here? The moderator, Claire Lamarche, had fainted. And the debate was suspended from that moment. And just seconds ago, a fire truck arrived here, and I imagine there were paramedics on the fire truck because they just went into the building carrying medical bags and equipment of some kind.
Well, a terribly unfortunate moment. There is a sense, though, that it's an interruption as opposed to a postponement, that they might actually get back underway?
As far as I know, they're calling it a suspension, and they're just waiting to reconvene. That's all I can tell you, Peter, at this point. It just happened. All
right. Well, Jason, stay where you are. I'll get back to you in a moment. As Jason said, the debate had been going on for 90 minutes until this happened, just 2 or 3 moments ago. The 5 main party leaders staging another passionate debate tonight on national television, this one, as we said, in French, this time with the whole unity question front and center. Bloc Québécois leader Gilles Duceppe was a minor player in the first debate. He was far more aggressive in this one. We begin with Neil MacDonald.
All 5 leaders were in the room, but only 3 were ever really in the game. On one side, 2 men with the same federalist vision and with one notable difference, more or less the same plan. On the other, the man with most of the Quebec seats and therefore the most to lose. And Gilles Duceppe attacked almost as soon as he opened his mouth.
Leur avocat, leur juge, leur constitution pour...
He accused the Federalist parties of imposing the Constitution on Quebec, of going to the Supreme Court to thwart the will of Quebecers, and deepening the insult by appointing a sort of legal aid lawyer to represent Quebec's interests against its will.
Bonsoir, mon français n'est pas très bon.
Preston Manning was the only leader with an equally tough opening, although he seemed to be mostly speaking to English Canadians. Quebecers could not have wanted to hear much of this.
One distinct society is not going to happen, and the old Federalists have no better ideas. Number 2, yes means yes, and will be seen as rejection by the rest of Canada, not an invitation to discuss a new deal.
The other leaders trod softly, concentrating on fiscal issues, jobs, taxes, and nation building through proper management. It was frustrating for Gilles Duceppe, a low-key discussion on subjects that are not his strong suit, and he took some shots.
C'est toujours la faute du fédéral.
Chrétien mocked Duceppe for blaming everything on Ottawa. Was it Ottawa's fault, he asked, that Duceppe's tour bus got lost the first week of the campaign?
C'est que le chauffeur d'autobus s'est trompé en suivant.
Dans le domaine de l'aéronautique, ça c'est grâce au fédéral. Dans le domaine de la pharmaceutique, grâce au fédéral.
And Charest hammered away at areas where Quebec has clearly profited from federal spending. But possibly most nettlesome to Duceppe was Preston Manning.
This is a national tragedy.
Taking his time, speaking only in English, interrupting the exchanges in French. At one point, Chrétien even started to reply in English.
Yes, but je voudrais vous répondre.
There was some mild give and take on unity issues, with Chrétien and Duceppe tangling about whether the sovereignty movement hurts the economy. Then Charest came up the middle, saying Chrétien doesn't understand the needs of unemployed Quebecers and Duceppe doesn't understand the effect of political uncertainty. Two leaders completely disconnected from reality, said Charest. After more than 90 minutes, things did start to heat up over the question of whether English and French Canada do indeed constitute two founding peoples. Once again, Preston Manning led off in English, saying that particular piece of history will be irrelevant in the next century. Jean Chrétien then said that Canada's many other cultures would disappear if left to the mercies of the provinces. Jean Charest basically agreed, and all that angered Gilles Duceppe. But after nearly 2 hours, the real red meat issues of national unity had remained largely unchewed. Neil MacDonald, CBC News, Ottawa.
All right, well, if you just joined us, once again, there has been an incident inside the room where the debate is taking place, and the debate has been suspended for the moment. This is the scene just outside the conference centre in Ottawa, where an ambulance has pulled up outside. The moderator fainted just about 5 or 6 minutes ago as they were entering the last half hour of the debate. Things have been suspended while medical attention is given to the moderator. Jason Moskowitz, the CBC's chief political correspondent, joins us again, once again, from just outside the conference center. Jason, at what point in the debate did this happen? What was happening during the debate?
They were just about to talk about the next referendum. That was the subject matter, and that's when Claire fainted. Lamarche, excuse me, right. I forgot her last name. Claire Lamarche fainted, and they never got to the subject of the referendum. And everything that's happened since, all we've heard were sirens, the fire truck, firemen that came with medical equipment, and then a few minutes after that, the ambulance behind me drove up, and everybody is just waiting. It's just a very, very strange circumstance that obviously nobody could have expected and nobody's ever seen before.
Well, let's hope that the medical people can do their work and that everything is fine with Ms. Lamarche and that eventually that the debate picks up again. Let's go back to the substance of what was going on this evening. As you said, they were just getting into really the expected most passionate part of all this, the national unity part and the discussion about what if may happen during the next referendum campaign. But before that, give us a sense of the difference tonight compared with last night and what was happening in that room.
Well, if you'll recall last night, Peter, Jean Charest was very successful at getting into the debate as often as he wanted by often cutting people off and just jumping into the debate. And it was clear tonight that Gilles Duceppe and Jean Chrétien were not going to allow that to happen 2 nights in a row. And Jean Charest did not have the territory that he had last night because his opponents wouldn't allow it. The other change is that this was really a debate among 3 people, the 3 Quebecers. And Preston Manning was there, and he certainly had some significant things to say to the rest of the country in English. And Alexa McDonough was a participant as well, but she had terrible time in French. Although she made a valiant effort, she did have great difficulty communicating.
Give us a sense of the strategy in Manning's move, pitching his message not to the main viewing audience, the Quebecers and French Canadians elsewhere, but to English Canada.
Well, it was clear that he's taken this position on unity. It's not a new position, but one could say that it was tougher than we've heard before. He clearly told this audience tonight in English that after a yes vote, there won't be any negotiation on a partnership. He said there will be negotiation on what to do with such matters as the debt. He also talked about the founding people. And he said, yes, that is a good principle that the country was founded upon, the 2 founding people, English and French. But he said the country has changed a great deal and that it is no longer applicable in many areas in this country.
All right, Jason, we'll stand by. We'll get back to you later in the program to give a sense of what's happening there in Ottawa. A remarkable moment in the nation's capital as the French language debate among the party leaders is under suspension at the moment as medical attention is being given to the moderator who fainted just moments before 10 o'clock this evening. Well, it's obviously going to take a while to see how this debate plays with the public, especially the public in Quebec, but reviews have been pouring in since last night on the English debate. And a lot of people are suggesting that Jean Charest won. We interviewed 5 voters in Cambridge, Ontario before the English debate, It's a riding that includes both urban and rural voters from a wide variety of backgrounds. Today we went back to Cambridge, back to our 5 voters, and found a strong consensus. Here's the CBC's Susan Harada.
The campaign had started.
The TVs were tuned in all over Cambridge last night for a debate that in the end helped make up some minds in the Ontario riding. All 5 voters we talked to here felt Jean Charest performed well, but not all will give him their vote.
Mr. Chrétien, Mr. Charest.
Ingrid Talbot settled in to watch, an undecided voter. By the time it was over, things were clear.
I got a sense of their true personalities coming through and their true ideas of what they want to do with this country coming through.
She crossed Preston Manning and Alexa McDonough off her list. She was impressed by Jean Charest, but still can't forgive the Mulroney years. So that leaves Jean Chrétien.
He finally explained what he's been doing for the last 3.5 years and what a mess the Mulroney or the Tory government had left the country 3.5 years ago with this huge deficit and the huge debt.
Melissa Pinero-Kovaduc was also undecided. During the debate, kept changing her mind from Chrétien to Charest and back again. Yes. Today, the recent graduate says she'll go Liberal, even though Charest impressed her too.
Charest brought up a lot of concerns about youth, and that was very important to me. But something I just cannot erase from my mind is Mulroney. And that whole, I was young then, but it still sticks in my head.
John Chrétien and John Charest.
That's the team Bruce Whitmer wants in Ottawa. He had planned to vote Liberal, and that hasn't changed, but he hopes Charest's performance results in a Conservative opposition.
Got the youth with John Charest and his new ideas, and maybe they can implement some of their ideas into the Liberal ideas, and I think that might make a good combination.
Actually, I found it very interesting last night, and I think it has helped me make up my mind.
Banker Ted Jeffries liked the way Alexa McDonough handled the debate, but really only considered voting for Reform, the Liberals, or the Tories. He's chosen the Tories.
I was impressed with Mr. Charest, less so with Jean Chrétien. I felt Preston Manning was negative.
Rod Archdeacon thought Charest won the debate, but he's still undecided, torn between Charest and Chrétien.
So I'll wait until I get up to the polling station and I'll make my decision at that point. But the debate did help last night because it did help eliminate some candidates.
If these Cambridge voters are any indication, Jean Charest's performance last night didn't do him any harm. But the Tories know that a comeback in this province depends on turning that admiration into a solid core of support. Susan Harada, CBC News, Cambridge, Ontario.
And a brief update from Ottawa as you look live to the scene outside the conference centre in the nation's capital. People have been asked to leave the conference room where the debate is being held. Medical attention still being given to the moderator of the debate, Claude Lamarche, and it's unclear at this moment whether or not the debate will actually start again tonight. Now, there are no post-debate polls yet from last night's English language debate, nothing to indicate whether the Conservatives have firmly gained support from Charest's performance. But as Terry Malewski reports, winning a debate is one thing, winning seats is another.
Thanks very much. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
For a candidate, having your leader do well in a debate can really make a difference.
That was great.
In Nova Scotia, Heather Foley's trying to win one for the Tories.
Just talking to people on the doorsteps. They'll come to the door and they'll tell me, look, I wasn't decided yesterday, but now I am. Jean Charest is our man, and that's what I like to hear.
Hi, how are you? Indeed, despite some spin doctoring by rival parties, voters all over the country seem to agree that Jean Charest is doing well. How are you?
I think Charest is quite articulate, and he knew how to present himself.
He was good in everything. He had an answer for everything.
I think Charest came out the winner, I think.
But even if they're right, will that really make any difference come election day? The pundits are in some doubt about that. Here in BC, for example, Jean Charest has not campaigned at all. The pollsters and political scientists say the Tories are so far behind, there's almost no hope for them here. They also say that across the country, Charest is a lot more popular than his party is.
Right now, today, on the basis of polling work which we've done just very recently, we have Jean Charest almost tied with the Prime Minister as the person who would make the best Prime Minister for Canada. He has very high numbers, and yet his party is trailing along at about 19%. So Jean Charest in the 30s, his party at around 19.
Pollster Angus Reid says Charest has gained some momentum. Political scientist Richard Johnston agrees.
My sense is that it might be worth a few percentage points to the Tories over the next week or two.
Does that mean seats, though?
Probably not, except possibly in Atlantic Canada.
Yeah.
Good news for Heather Foley then, but not so good at the other end of the country.
Preston Manning.
In the West, it's Preston Manning who seems to be winning the fight for the right. And debates may not change that, particularly for people who don't watch debates.
No, we didn't. I didn't. Did you? Half an hour and then I was bored.
So for some voters, TV debates make no difference at all.
It's just boring.
Of course, some people find these things fascinating, but decisive, maybe not. Tony Malewski, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, let's get back up to Ottawa. Jason Moskowitz is standing by to give us more on this remarkable event in the French language debate where things have suddenly been suspended after the moderator fainted. Jason, what more can you tell us?
Well, we're still waiting to see what happens to Claire Lamarche. As you know, she fainted about 10-15 minutes ago. The ambulance is waiting outside. Our cameras didn't catch what exactly happened inside the room. I'm here with Normand Fortier, an Ottawa resident who was in the room, who did see what happened. Mr. Fortier, could you please describe what happened inside with Ms. Lamarche?
Monsieur Lépine was preparing his question to one of the members, and suddenly she's just slipped off their chair to the floor, and people began to try to help her, and they continued asking the question, but realized it was a bit more serious than we thought. And suddenly they interrupted the debate. They brought in staff from it seems from the Congress Center. And then the firefighters came in, and finally the ambulance arrived. And we were asked to leave. It seemed that the debate has stopped, and I don't think they'll go back in.
And when you left, Madame Lamarche was still in the room?
Yes, and there was quite a lot of people surrounding her, giving her very serious attention. It looked very serious as a situation because that's when they asked the crowd to leave and to have more space. It was very warm in the room, very warm, even for the spectators. So I guess we hope for the best. Hopefully they'll take her to Montfort Hospital and we'll give her services in French. Still open.
Mr. Fortier, thank you. Peter?
All right, Jason, thank you. And just as you were talking to Normand Fortier in the background, you may have seen the ambulance taking Miss Lamarche. She was brought out in a wheelchair to the ambulance. They're now heading off to a hospital. So the good news is that she's obviously recovered from the fainting, but they want to check and make sure that everything is okay. The status of the rest of the French language debate and the key issue of the national unity issue that was just getting into the major part of the debate is still up in the air. We will keep you informed during the hour as to what happens in the nation's capital. Well, still ahead in tonight's news.
We simply would not have been able to manage without them.
Winnipeg salutes its flood heroes. And Canada's biggest crime lab re-examines dozens of murder cases.
And later on the magazine, mining for business in Zaire. Why a Canadian company is embracing the rebel forces of Laurent Kabila.
Is fidelity important in your life? Is devotion to seeing things through today and tomorrow what counts? Absolutely. It's the foundation of growth, and the way Fidelity grew to be the world's largest mutual fund company, with 9 million investors just like you. With a world of resources behind you, you're free to enjoy all life has to offer today, because every step of the journey is as important as the goal.
First, there was Program, the only monthly flea control tablet. Now there's a new all-in-one way to protect your dog from fleas and heartworm.
Hey, Sally, take your Program pill?
Henry, my veterinarian told me about a new all-in-one approach to flea control and heartworm prevention. Now, fleas shouldn't be a problem. Plus, I'm protected from deadly heartworms. Ask if you can go see your veterinarian.
But I can't speak human.
They love you. They'll take you.
Ask your veterinarian about the new all-in-one way to protect your dog from heartworm and fleas.
I've got a great idea. I just need a bank that understands my business.
We're making great strides in technology. I need a bank that's up to speed.
We've grown so fast. I need a bank that can keep up.
At the Business Development Bank of Canada, our business is helping small business grow. With unconventional financing and a wide range of management services, we'll help you reach your goals. And and beyond. The Business Development Bank of Canada. We're a different kind of bank.
Mazda 626LX. With more interior room than the competition, it truly is a sedan for the whole family. Loaded with luxury features and Mazda's exclusive leadership warranty. For quality, reliability, and sheer performance, choose Mazda 626LX. With so much interior room, we call it the family man's family sedan.
Mazda, passion for the road.
Manitobans said goodbye today, goodbye and thank you to the thousands of military personnel who came to help fight the flood of the century. Now, with the flood threat going, as Red Sharon reports, so is the military.
They came rolling through the city streets like a triumphant army, and hundreds of Winnipeggers stood in the cold and the rain to say thank you.
Oh, I just want to show our gratitude to all our forces for having kept us safe, as the sign says, and we're very proud of them.
They've done a lot to save our city.
It was the largest deployment of Canadian troops since the Korean War, at one point over 8,600. Everywhere you looked in southern Manitoba these past 3 weeks, you usually saw green. In the air, on the water, in the streets, but mostly you saw soldiers from across the country working side by side with civilians.
PI for Richmond,
Nova Scotia, Quebec.
Matthew Berg says it was a pleasure to stand in the rain and applaud. The military helped him save his house. 10 days ago, they worked through the night shoring up his leaking dike. They're no longer strangers in uniform. Now they're friends.
I've worked side by side with them. They aren't far away. They're close to my heart now, and they have names attached to them.
I'm pumped. I'm pumped up. I got chills going up my back.
Lieutenant Colonel Walt Natinchuk says this is the highlight of any soldier's career, and he won't get any argument from this soldier.
It hit me here, and it's just mind-boggling. The last couple of years haven't been that good for us, and this is just amazing.
As far as Mayor Susan Thompson is concerned, what they did was save Winnipeg from disaster.
Made me appreciate them more and be very thankful that we have them.
Could you have won this battle without them?
Absolutely not.
Thompson says nobody's forgetting the damage that has been done, the homes that were lost, but it would have been much worse without the military. So in large groups and small, they asked for autographs or just stood and said thanks.
Excellent. Very good.
Thank everybody in Winnipeg for all their hospitality.
Red Sharon, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Most of the troops deployed to Manitoba will be gone by the end of the week, but about 2,000 are staying behind, mostly engineers who will help repairing roads and infrastructure. Ontario Premier Mike Harris is looking at fingerprinting everyone in the province, all 11 million people. The idea came up because Toronto is debating whether fingerprints should be used to fight welfare fraud. Harris says it may be better to do everyone so welfare recipients are not singled out. But he says the province's privacy commissioner would have to approve the idea, and that commissioner says it would be a serious threat to confidentiality. The biggest crime lab in the country is going under the microscope. Evidence from the Centre of Forensic Sciences in Toronto helped convict Guy Paul Morin of murder, wrongly as it turned out. Today, the Ontario government announced a review of other cases the lab handled. Jeffrey Kaufman has the details.
Here comes Guy. This inquiry into the wrongful murder conviction of Guy Paul Morin just keeps on uncovering things that went wrong with Ontario's criminal justice system. Big things, like the integrity of key scientific evidence.
To me, it was obvious contamination.
It is damning testimony because those contaminated fibers were critical evidence in the trial that convicted Morin in the 1984 murder of little Christine Jessup. Morin has since been cleared by a DNA test done in the U.S. The credibility of Ontario's Centre of Forensic Sciences has been shattered over the last month after one employee admitted she may have misled police over the value of the evidence. Her boss then admitted he was shocked to learn of the skimpy evidence that was the basis for the case. And then a British forensic expert told the inquiry he was alarmed by what he called dangerously unsound work conducted by scientists at the centre.
I wouldn't really say that the people really should get their hopes up in having anything dealt with at the Centre of Forensic Sciences accurately. That's what I'm saying.
The centre says the contamination of evidence in the Jessup case couldn't happen now. The centre has new labs and more rigid procedures. but the center will re-examine its evidence in several dozen major cases from the mid-1980s.
What we're trying to do is ensure that that it doesn't happen again and can't happen again by taking every step that we can possibly do to ensure the integrity of cases.
But the lawyer who helped clear Morin's name thinks all this is much more serious.
We're clearly talking about a huge systemic problem and a potential for a number of Guy Paul Morans being out there right now that haven't been uncovered.
But it is too early to say that there really are more Guy Paul Morans out there because of flimsy forensic work. The center is merely going to check its records, and it's only if mistakes are found that cases could then be reopened. As for this inquiry, after this week it moves on to its next phase, an examination of the police investigation of the murder, and just how that investigation went so wrong. Jeffrey Kaufman, CBC News, Toronto.
A bomb exploded near the heart of China's government today. The blast tore through a park near the Beijing offices of several top Chinese leaders. Police moved in quickly to sweep the area clean, and tonight officials confirmed the explosion was the work of a suicide bomber. Another blast in southern China killed 5 people today. Iran gave up hope today that any more people survive Saturday's big earthquake. Rescue operations are over, and Iran's latest estimate is that 1,500 people were killed. Tent villages are springing up to shelter the tens of thousands of people who lost their homes. The earthquake flattened one town after another, and the full extent of the damage is still being assessed. We'll be back in a moment with the latest from Ottawa.
Is fidelity important in your life? Is devotion to seeing things through today and tomorrow what counts? Absolutely. It's the foundation of growth. And the way Fidelity grew to be the world's largest mutual fund company, with 9 million investors just like you. With a world of resources behind you, you're free to enjoy all life has to offer today, because every step of the journey is as important as the goal.
You know why muffins are so soft and fluffy? It's when you put the butter on, the butter melts and goes in the little holes, and it melts all the way in. That's when you can start eating it.
There's nothing like butter to bring out the taste of your favorite foods. There's butter, and there is no other. Only butter.
We sure are lucky.
No fleas thanks to program.
We can ride in the van, watch TV.
Even sleep with the kids.
Henry, Molly, time for program.
Flea control? Now?
But we don't have fleas.
Here, Henry, Molly.
Before fleas become a problem, prevent them with Program. 1 dose once a month. It's that simple.
Let's see. So we can go camping?
Maybe even sailing.
See your veterinarian for Program and ask about heartworm prevention for dogs.
They wanted to surprise me with Dad's special pancakes. Boy, did they get a surprise.
Uh-oh.
No problem. Uh-oh, big problem. Time to test this new stuff.
Introducing new Stronger Mr. Clean with even more muscle than before. New Mr. Clean muscles down under to lift off dirt faster, better than the leading pine cleaner. To get you off your hands and knees the easy way.
Now that's a surprise.
New Mr. Clean shines through even better than before.
Well, a decision has been made in Ottawa after the fainting of the moderator at the French language leaders debate. The rest of the debate has been cancelled. Jason Moskowitz, the CBC's chief political correspondent, joins us from outside the conference centre. The leaders have all gone. Jason, did they have anything to say when they left?
No, and they've agreed not to say anything. There will be no interviews, no scrums, not by the leaders and not by their party people who are here with them. They've decided not to say a thing. The networks are briefing the journalists now as to whether there will be a pickup to this debate at one point. We should point out that the one subject that wasn't dealt with, the last subject, national unity and the next referendum, that was not debated this evening because of the fainting of Claire
LaMarche. Yeah. What is the impact of this? What are the consequences if, in fact, there is no further French language leaders debate and that this issue isn't debated?
Well, it's clear that this is the issue everybody was waiting for, and this is the issue that the leaders would have wanted to debate. Certainly Jean Charest wanted this debate, Jean Chrétien wanted the debate, and more than anybody, Gilles Duceppe wanted this debate. So it's a question as to what the networks will do, what the leaders will do, and whether it's practical to put this debate together for the half hour that remained.
All right, Jason Moskowitz reporting to us once again from Ottawa tonight, just outside the conference center. Well, for more on the French language debate and what in fact did get discussed, here's Brian Stewart in the magazine.
Peter, thank you. Up until the moderator fainted and the debate was suspended, the party leaders had been going at it for over an hour. Watching it in Quebec City, Gilbert Lavoie, editor-in-chief of Le Soleil, and in Montreal, Don McPherson, columnist with the Gazette. Don, difficult to talk about the debate at a time like this, but given its importance, we must. When it happened, how had the debate been going in your estimation?
Well, I think it had been going fairly evenly. I think that Jean Chrétien hadn't scored many points, but I think he hadn't lost many points either. I think he'd had a rather conservative game, a rather defensive game plan going into this match. I think Jean Charest had performed up to expectations. I thought that he had performed well and perhaps was the most effective debater and the most effective communicator among the three principal leaders as far as the Quebec debate was concerned. And I also thought that Gilles Duceppe did a good job in terms of appealing to the hardcore nationalist audience that he was trying to reach. Nobody was clearly ahead or clearly behind, certainly among that big three, if we can refer to them that way.
Gilbert Lavoie, who was under the most pressure tonight to perform? Who had to really come through?
Obviously, Gilles Duceppe, he did so bad last night, even though it was the English debate. He had to win tonight. I would say that he did much better. But as a matter of fact, the three major players did much better tonight. Mr. Chrétien was calm, confident, and he did not take any chance, but he managed to throw a few jabs, one of them at Mr. Duceppe that was pretty good. Jean Charest was quite impressive, as we all expected tonight. I was more especially impressed by how calm he could be after a debate. He almost appeared like a honest broker once in a while. Duceppe did well in these circumstances.
The Prime Minister seemed quite calm throughout. Did he have a strategy going into this debate, how he was going to approach the other two from Quebec?
Well, I think Mr. Chrétien knew that he could not make any gain tonight. All he had was to keep his ground, not to take any chance, and he did not take any chance. He did not tell us anything new tonight. He stuck by Team Canada and deficit reduction.
Don McPherson, as noted in the news, the national unity really didn't get discussed. Certainly the referendum didn't at all. There seemed early on to be a very strong focus on social problems, youth unemployment in particular, much more of a focus, much more of a harder attention to social problems. Is this representative of how Quebec feels vis-a-vis the rest of the country?
I think it is. There's a lot of concern here in Quebec about the state of the economy. Unemployment is high here. There is a lot of poverty. There's a sense really that if there's been an economic recovery, it's not being felt on the ground here. A lot of concern about unemployment and even job insecurity, the insecurity of people who have jobs now but are worried about losing them. And I thought that was reflected in a lot of the questions, especially from the public in the early part of the debate tonight. You could see that this is an issue which really concerns and worries people here.
Manning took a bit of a gamble, I suppose, showing up. He was in an awkward position throughout, speaking very little French and very little, in fact, chance to speak in English. Was he a negative presence there tonight?
I don't think he was a negative presence. I think probably what he had in mind was using this debate. He knew that he wasn't going to make much gains as far as the Francophone audience was concerned, but using this debate to try and score whatever points he could with the English-speaking electorate. I mean, after all, the debate here is going to be reported in English-speaking Canada. So I think that was his approach in going into the debate here tonight.
Mr. Lavoie, where does it go from here? We have a stillborn debate now on national unity and the referendum, the key points we didn't get to. What happens now in the campaign?
Well, first of all, I don't think there will be another debate on national unity. I'm not sure in any case that we would have learned anything tonight. Obviously, the three leaders were getting ready for it. I'm talking the three leaders, talking about the three Quebec leaders, Mr. Chrétien, Charest, and Duceppe. I don't think any one of them would have won anything. Mr. Duceppe would have tried to impress the sovereignist audience, but I think Mr. Chrétien and Charest, especially with Mr. Parizeau's book launching, would have had a few ammunition against him. So I think it doesn't happen very often in this country where we don't talk national unity. It happened tonight.
We got a little bit of a taste, I think, of what that debate would have been like when the question of minority rights came up, and that provided an opportunity for a kind of a segue into a discussion of Canadian duality, French-English duality, and the implications of Quebec's separation for the linguistic minorities in Canada. And we saw the two federalist Quebec leaders, Chrétien and Charest, kind of ganging up on Duceppe on that question. And if there were any highlights in this, if there were any highlights in this debate, I think that was one of them. The point where I think it was Jean Charest who asked Gilles Duceppe whether he thought that Quebec's separation would help the francophone minorities in the rest of the country.
Sorry, Don, I have to go at that point. Thanks, both of you, very much.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Please stay with us when we come back. From election in Canada to rebellion in Zaire, why a Canadian company wants to do business with a new government.
This total area has something of the order of 5 million tonnes of contained copper, making this one of the largest copper mine in the world.
On Monday, June 2nd, every Canadian on the list of electors will be able to vote. If you receive a confirmation of registration notice, rest assured you are registered to vote. If not, there's still time to register. For information, please contact Elections Canada at 1-800-INFO-VOTE. Because voting is one way to make your mark.
If you're looking for a truck that meets your every demand, it's time you took a look at Mazda during the Mazda Big Bang event. For a limited time, get the Mazda B4000 SE with air conditioning at no extra cost or credit of $1,060. Or if you prefer, you can lease it for only $239 a month. The Mazda Big Bang event. Hurry! Before it's gone in a flash. Only at your Mazda dealer.
Whoa, what a selection.
Yes, indeed. It is a plethora of choice.
That's what I meant to say, a plethora of things.
Yeah, there are on average 134 brands of beer available in the beer store. That's about the best selection of beer anywhere in North America. Impressive, huh?
Hold on. These are for sale?
Oh, yeah.
This is not just some Hall of Fame?
You mean Hall of Foam?
Yeah. All right, come on, let's get a souvenir. Huh?
Hats.
No, beer.
Oh, that's
The beer store, the best place in the world to buy beer.
If the most deadly viruses became immune to man's most potent medicines, if you could visit a place you thought existed only in storybooks, if you have Rogers, you can. The Rogers Specialty Channels. For as little as $2.70 a month, call 1-888-ROGERS-1 to find out more.
Tomorrow, President Mobutu Sese Seko of Zaire will meet with rebel leader Laurent Kabila in a last chance to end that country's civil war. The rebels are poised to take the capital of Kinshasa. They've insisted Mobutu end his 32 years as dictator and leave the country. Meanwhile, you may not believe who is helping to finance the rebel cause. Multinational companies, among them Canadian. Canadian journalist Elizabeth Jones was in Zaire when the businessman came to call on the rebels.
A victory rally in liberated Lubumbashi. After 32 years of dictatorship under President Mobutu Sese Seko, the people here are celebrating the arrival of rebel forces and their leader, Laurent Kabila. Lubumbashi is Zaire's second and most prosperous city. This province is Kabila's home. An awful lot hinges on this man, yet we and all those who live in Zaire know so little about him.
Kufanya matayarisho ya vita ili kumfukuza yule shetani wenu. Maana nasikia bado yuko kama ni Kinshasa kule ambako ni makao makuu ya wezi wote.
The rebels walked into Lubumbashi and within 48 hours had secured it. They were greeted with open arms by a population who consider them an army of liberation. This is the Zairean army commander who betrayed Mobutu. When the rebels arrived, he ordered his troops to change sides and turn their guns on Mobutu's presidential force. They've handed over their ammunition and weapons to the rebel alliance, and with them, Kabila's forces are even better placed to take the capital, Kinshasa.
Le président Mobutu étant malade, qu'est-ce qu'on pouvait faire de lui et qu'est-ce qu'on pouvait encore attendre de lui dans cette république? Il a gouverné pendant 35 ans. Qu'est-ce qu'il a fait de cette république? Moi, je suis un officier supérieur. Je gagne tout au plus $28. Comment nouer les deux bouts de moi? Les hôpitaux coûtent très cher. Et l'unité que je commande n'a pas de fonds de fonctionnement, n'a pas de fonds de ménage.
After a church service, these rebels were invited to a pastor's house for drinks. They were strangers, from Goma to the east. Musoka Banyanga joined up last fall, after he'd exhausted all ideas of how to eke out a living in a country where there was no work and the currency had no value. The rebels find an audience. These are problems that touch the hearts of almost every Zairean you meet. Masudi Mumbere says it was the constant chaos caused by hungry, looting soldiers that drove him into the arms of the rebel force. Lubumbashi is a city built on the fantastic wealth created by the vast copper, cobalt and zinc deposits in the region. But it's shocking to see just how little of that wealth actually touched the lives of the people who dug it out of the ground. After more than 4 decades of work as a miner, Mafude Chonga has this to show for it. He lives in this hollow house with his aged mother. All they own are a few pots and pans in the corner of the room, and they go for days without food to cook in them.
Jusqu'à hapa sasa. Mais hii miaka yote nilikuwa bien. Pale niko na bibi bien kabisa. Salon nini, maradio nini. Après tunakuwa mu gouvernement ina changer. Tulikuwa kama ni 6 mois atakuwa tunapata nani bunga nini. Ndio tunaanza kwenda kufanya machangement na ile bintu ya kulia. Ili mitoke ilikuwa inatoka Mozambique kuleta kubea makobari na nini. Ndio tunafanya shamba.
Jacamine, the state-owned mining company. This is where Chonga has worked for the past 46 years. For the past 6, there's been no smoke from this smelter. That's how long this plant has been idle. Chonga and his colleagues show up at work every day in the hope the plant might start up again, even though they no longer get paid. At the Jacamine Company Hospital, Chonga has been asked to clean out the drains. He's not paid for this either, but he admits he works partly so he can steal. Mobutu's regime is often described as a kleptocracy because it literally looted the country's resources into the ground. But more than that, it created a culture of crime.
Qu'est-ce que vous faites? Sinda.
If most people became destitute under Mobutu, a few got very rich through their collaboration with him. The governor of Katanga province, for example.
Ah bon, vous trouvez ça riche? Je n'ai aucun avion, moi. Je n'ai aucun bateau. C'est tout ce que j'ai comme maison.
Kyungu hits the campaign trail in a bid to save his political skin. Mandela, the people cry out, believing Kyungu to in some way be behind their liberation from Mobutu. He's adopted the same flag as the Rebel Alliance. It's from pre-Mobutu days, back when the country was called the Congo. Kyungu is a master of political manipulation and is quickly cashing in on the liberation fever. Hoping no one will tell, he's no longer a political leader, but a dinosaur. Kyungu summons the international press to declare calm across the city, as though he's in some way responsible for it.
La situation à travers la ville aujourd'hui, elle est bonne. Parce que vous êtes avec moi ici, nous avons connu la première nuit calme. La nuit d'hier à aujourd'hui, il n'y a pas eu un seul coup de feu.
The city is calm, but it's not calm for him. Within 48 hours, he's under house arrest. His prospects, not good. On the other side of town, mining executives live in a different world. They've just flown in from across the globe. At Lubumbaši's top hotel, they're cozying up to the rebel leadership.
We have made our plane available to certain members, certain leaders of the alliance, and it's been to get them to places where we need to get business going.
America Mineral Fields personnel are on a tour of a Jacquemin site. They're prospective new investors. This mine needs an immediate $40 million to get it up and running.
We are going down in the mine. This shaft number 5.
This could be one of the richest copper and zinc mines in the world, yet it closed in 1993 thanks to the rapacious greed of Mobutu's executives in Kinshasa. They had diverted so much of the earnings of the mine into their own pockets, there was nothing left for basic machinery and spare parts. They very nearly killed the goose that lays the golden egg.
We do the job here, but the money is going to Kinshasa, to the government. And the government that must give us back some money to buy equipment. But don't understand our problems.
America Mineral Fields puts pen to paper and announces a deal to rehabilitate the mine. The rebels have been in Lubumbashi for just days, but already their government is open for business. But the new rebel finance minister is quick to remind the assembled press there's still a war to be won.
The absolute priority is to win the war. And we have to buy the military equipment that we need, supply our soldiers, and make sure that we get the total victory. Then and then only should we start having a party.
As if anyone needed a reminder that there's still a war being fought in this country, there are troops at Lubumbashi Airport, preparing to be shipped out to the front, including a small group of Western-trained Angolan special forces. They're kept in one corner of the airport, away from civilians. In another corner, a Canadian mining company is optimistically collecting its $5 million worth of drilling equipment. Ted Webb, president of Tenke Fungurume Mining, or TFM, has just flown in from London for a 24-hour whirlwind tour to meet the rebel leaders and visit TFM's mammoth mining project outside of town. First, he must pay his respects to the new finance minister. The deal that Webb negotiated last December with Mobutu's government can only go ahead with his blessing. The rebels want Tenke's $50 million down payment on their concession to finish fighting the war. Tenke wants the concession. Webb tracks the minister down at his official residence, and the meeting happens instantly.
A little bit short, eh?
It's a friendly encounter.
It's tough.
The deal looks safe.
Well, why don't we just shake hands quietly?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
The difference between what is happening today in Zaire and what happened many times before, where people have tried to change things, is that there's nothing left in the cupboard to steal anymore or to exploit by government. It's all gone. There's nothing left.
From the air, Webb and his team survey their vast concession northwest of Lubumbashi. It's an area 50 kilometers wide and 30 kilometers long.
This total area has something of the order of 5 million tons of contained copper, and all of these other hills, as far as you can see this way, are all copper deposits, making this one of the largest copper mine in the world here. And we'll commence mining by taking the tops off all of these hills where we have the copper, and gradually over the years it'll coagulate into a very large open pit, probably encompassing all of these hills here, and probably eventually being between 300 and 400 meters deep.
You might expect such a radical change to the landscape to be opposed by the people who live here. But after decades of economic hardship and civil strife, these people have other priorities. When the war swept through this area recently, locals actually banded together to prevent retreating Zairian soldiers from looting the mine. The mine is their future.
Even the population don't think that we will destroy, the company will destroy. No, TFM will help this population to perfect its system of life, to develop the environment. I don't think, and everybody is very happy to and say welcome TFM, because it was the time.
TFM will need to spend another $400 million to get this project up and running. In addition to the $250 million they're paying the government for the mining rights. The proven reserves amount to something in the order of $33 billion, and mining experts say it could be 4 or 5 times that amount. For all concerned, there's a lot at stake.
In other words, we can get to virtually everywhere we need to now. So with the drilling crews...
There's no technical risk as such. The risk is all around the politics in the country. The risk is around the ability to us maintain custody of this project. If we make billions of dollars out of this for our shareholders, which we hope to do, it'll be because we started out and we've been able to behave and work within a country which for a long time is going to be quite difficult, despite the political solutions.
So far, the political solution has been the ultimate one: war. Colonel Nzuzi and his troops are getting ready to join the rebel forces on their march to Kinshasa. The man who decided not to fight Kabila's forces in Lubumbashi now advises his former army colleagues in the capital to do the same.
Que nos amis de la DSP qui nous suivent, inutile de continuer le combat, parce que le président Kabila va foncer sur Kinshasa. Qu'ils épargnent les vies humaines de Kinshasa, comme nous l'avions fait ici à Lubumbashi, qu'ils déposent les armes à travers tous les camps militaires de Kinshasa. À partir d'aujourd'hui, qu'ils lèvent le drapeau blanc.
For The National, I'm Elizabeth Jones in Lubumbashi, Zaire.
Tomorrow night at 8 o'clock, a special edition of the National Magazine. Hannah Gartner is in Montreal for the second of our election town halls. The topic, national unity. Representatives from all 5 parties will be there. Now please stay with us. Peter Mansbridge will be back in a moment with more on tonight's dramatic developments during the French language debate.
Latest walking shoes distribute pressure 30% better than before. So now you can outwalk the dog. Easy Spirit, inside's advanced walking technology, outside's the whole world.
At Addison on Bay, we've sold more Cadillacs than any other dealer in Canada. How?
with offers like these. Right now, you can drive a brand new 97 Cadillac STS for an unprecedented $599 a month, or choose the Cadillac Sedan DeVille, a remarkable value at just $528 a month. It's no wonder we put over 50,000 people in a Cadillac. Don't miss this special offer from Toronto's Cadillac store, Addison on Bay. Some people just know where to go.
Traditional banking is on its deathbed, and in its place, a new ethic arises. A bank built without bricks, but with principles, whose members define its direction. It is a testimony to the idea that every ending is also a beginning. Are you ready to begin? Citizens Bank of Canada.
Okay, when it comes to big things, we're looking for names we can trust.
At Sears, we have all the brand names you want, all under one roof. And here's something else you'll want. All furniture and major appliances are on sale. Use your Sears card and don't pay for 1 full year. Plus, earn valuable points towards almost anything in the store.
Great. Now what about a big guarantee?
At Sears, if there's ever a problem, there is no problem. We service everything we sell.
Sears?
Sears.
Stop ignoring me! Those engineers put me here because you need jet dry in your cycle. Give me some jet dry. Let me fight that residue. Hallelujah! Look at that! Brilliant!
Jet dry.
Mwah.
Your dishwasher was designed for it.
Well, an update now on what happened at tonight's leaders' debate in Ottawa. Joining us once again, our chief political correspondent, Jason Moskowitz, just outside the conference center. Jason, what happens now after the sudden suspension of the French language leaders' debate?
Well, the question earlier this evening was what happens now? Will the last half hour, the subject of the next referendum and unity, be discussed at another opportunity? Network executives here say that they would be open to the possibility and they would get to the parties on that. But the fact is, Peter, that it took months to negotiate these debates. To negotiate 1 half hour of a very sensitive subject, is that feasible? With about 2.5 weeks left in the election campaign, the betting here is that it wouldn't be feasible, that there will be someone who would not want to debate the subject, and that it is likely not to happen.
In a sentence, it must have been awfully strange when the spinners, who are usually so talkative, left there tonight.
Nobody knew what to say, and clearly there was never an option of resuming the debate with another moderator tonight. That was just something that nobody was prepared to do, and it was just over from the moment it ended at 10 o'clock here in Ottawa.
All right, Jason, thanks very much. Well, that's the National for this Tuesday. Local news next on most of these stations. Right after that, the late edition of Behind the Ballot. Thanks for watching tonight. We'll see you again tomorrow.
Incisive, in-depth coverage of all the issues. It's what CBC Radio News is known and respected for. During the election campaign, our reporters will travel with the party leaders. National reports, regional analysis.
The federal election on CBC Radio.
1-to-1 Challenge of Champions, June 1st on CBC.
Over and over, I ask Canadians what is most important to them, a strong economy or a tax cut before they can afford one. They've told me a strong economy. A strong economy means a secure future. It means jobs. It means health care will be protected. I believe that a premature tax cut would put these things at risk. I will not gamble your future and your children's future to buy your votes.
Leaders of both old-line parties say, don't worry about national unity. Distinct Society for Quebec is the answer. They think all Canadians are not equal. Preston Manning has a vision of a united Canada in which everyone is treated equally. Reform's Fresh Start plan calls for equality for all provinces, no special deals, and a real plan on how to handle any future votes on separation.
Reform. Now you have a real alternative.
Paid for by the Reform Party.